Chapter 39:39. What are you still looking at? Come and help. The blue-haired youth shouted anxiously. What was there to look at for a nobody? This madman was the main point. Jiang Chun and Jiang Xing were the first to react. They hated the madman to the bone. Because back then in the demon palace, the madman alone had forced them to flee in a sorry state under the watchful eyes of the crowd. To them, this was undoubtedly a great humiliation. The God Race mark was immediately activated. The Devour Law and the Space-Time Law, two ultimate intents, roared out, carrying a destructive divine power as they blasted towards the madman's two ultimate intents. Boom. Borrowing the power of the God Race mark, Jiang Chun and Jiang Xing's ultimate intents could be said to be unstoppable. The madman's two ultimate intents were annihilated on the spot. Immediately after, Jiang Chun and Jiang Xing waved their hands, and the Devour Law and Space-Time ultimate intents aggressively charged towards the madman. Looks like the lesson I taught you last time wasn't enough. The madman smiled sinisterly. In just an instant, he turned into a 10,000-foot-tall giant. The mark of all evil appeared between his eyebrows. The power of the source of all evil rolled out. As he took a step forward, the world here immediately began to collapse. The space-time law and destruction law surged, and as they merged with the source of all evil, the two ultimate intents once again appeared, emitting a divine power that soared to another level. Boom. Accompanied by a loud explosion, the four ultimate intents collided, and a destructive aura swept out in all directions like a tide. They were completely evenly matched. Ryuko's gaze finally moved away from Qin Feiyang and landed on the madman's forehead, a trace of surprise appearing on his face. What kind of mark is this? It actually has such a terrifying divine power. The reason why the God Race of the Divine Kingdom was powerful was precisely because of the God Race mark. It could be said that, without the 3,000 incarnations, the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan would have to submit to the God Race. But now, in a small place like this, there was someone who had the same method. Although the marks were different, the effect was the same. The most important thing, this kind of mark had never been heard of before. Watch how I trample on you so-called prodigies today. The madman laughed wildly. He threw a punch. Not good. Jiang Chun and Jiang Xing's expressions changed. That's right. It wasn't just this person's law intent. Even this person's physical body possessed a power that surpassed ultimate intent. Back in the demonic palace, this was how they were defeated by a lunatic. Rumble, true enough. The scene that happened in the demon hall back then was happening again. Two ultimate profound meanings, coupled with the madman's powerful physical body and strength, immediately showed a scene of destruction. Jiang Chun and the other man's ultimate intent shattered. Following closely, the madman leaped into the sky. His body was like a demon god as he slammed his palm toward Ryuko and the others. Attack now! The blue-haired youth shouted. Boom! In an instant. Apart from Ryuko, the other 8 geniuses immediately activated their ultimates. Each of them had mastered an ultimate profundity of an ultimate law. This kind of strength, in the sky cloud realm, was already enough to sweep across all directions. However, at this moment, facing a madman, they were physically and mentally weak. 9 ultimate profound meanings of the ultimate laws and 18 ultimate profound meanings of ordinary laws were like a torrent, continuously bombarding the madman's giant hand. However, the scene that appeared was like a group of ants standing at the foot of an elephant. The madman just slammed his palm down, and the ultimate profound meanings were constantly shattered like fragile dead wood. This, the blue-haired youth and the other 8 were dumbfounded. At this moment, they just realized. The madman's imprint was completely different from the God Race's divine seal. Because the God Race's imprint could only increase the strength of one's law intent. It couldn't increase the strength of the physical body. But the madman's imprint could not only increase the strength of one's law intent, but it could also increase the strength of the physical body. With this imprint, whether it was the madman's law intent or physical body, he could crush the ultimate profound meanings of the ultimate laws. It was simply invulnerable. In other words, the madman's imprint was even more powerful than the God Race's divine seal. This was the true ultimate power. This is his strength. The sky cloud realm isn't as simple as we thought. Jiang Xing said in a deep voice. Long Chun, Madman Long Qin, Li Feng, Yin Xiang, and the Golden-Winged Wolf King. Each of these 6 people had strength that wasn't inferior to theirs. Especially Long Chun, Madman, and the Golden-Winged Wolf King. They all had some heaven-defying means. Long Chun had a god's domain that could nullify all intense and divine techniques. The Golden-Winged Wolf King had a terrifying method to deprive cultivation. The Madman had an ultimate power that surpassed the god race's imprint. Although the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm couldn't compare to the prodigies of the Divine Kingdom as a whole, in terms of individual means, the Madman and the other 2 had already surpassed the prodigies of the Divine Kingdom. Just so. But suddenly, Ryuko spoke, his words full of contempt. As his voice fell, the 3,000 incarnations were activated. Seeing this scene, Jiang Chun, Jiang Xing, the blue-haired youth, and the hundreds of prodigies of the god race immediately shrank their pupils and retreated to the side. The 3,000 incarnations was a secret technique of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan. It was because of the 3,000 incarnations that the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan could stand above the god race and the human race and unify the Divine Kingdom. As long as the 3,000 incarnations appeared, it was equivalent to transforming into an invincible god of war. Although Long Chun had the means to restrain the 3,000 incarnations in the Sky Cloud realm, Long Chun wasn't here now. The Madman's means were indeed terrifying and his ultimate power was invincible in the world. But in the face of the 3,000 incarnations, even the ultimate power had to bow down. There really are 3,000 incarnations? At the same time, the Madman also frowned slightly. However, he didn't retreat because of this. On the contrary, his battle intent soared. If he couldn't even defeat this Ryuko, then how could he defeat Qin Feiyang? Because not only did Qin Feiyang control the 3,000 incarnations, he also had the Eye of Heaven. His strength was far above this Ryuko. If he was really defeated by this Ryuko today, it meant that his strength was far inferior to Qin Feiyang. Although they were brothers who had gone through life and death together, he didn't want to lose to Qin Feiyang. Therefore, he must win this battle. Only then could he prove that he wasn't weaker than Qin Feiyang. Therefore, when he saw Ryuko activate the 3,000 incarnations, he also decisively activated his battle soul, Blood Eye. As the Blood Eye swept over, not only Ryuko, but even the 3,000 incarnations were petrified from head to toe. Then, the Madman didn't hesitate at all, and slammed his palm towards Ryuko and the 3,000 incarnations. Because a battle at this level was constantly changing, the slightest negligence could give the other party a chance to turn the tables. In other words, he couldn't give the other party any chance. What? Seeing this scene, Jiang Chun and the blue-haired youth's eyes suddenly widened, and their faces were filled with disbelief. Petrification? What kind of method was this? Especially Jiang Chun and Jiang Xing. When they fought with the Madman in the demonic palace last time, they didn't see the Madman use this method. Even a peak dominator who had mastered the ultimate meaning could be petrified? What kind of joke was this? Jiang Xing shouted. Ryuko, don't look at his eyes. Ryuko was also shocked. Hearing Jiang Xing's reminder, he quickly avoided the Madman's Blood Eye. The 3,000 incarnations did the same. However, the petrification on their bodies didn't disappear because they avoided the Blood Eye. In fact, they were still petrified. How could this be? Jiang Xing was also stunned. In this situation, logically speaking, as long as they avoided the other party's eyes, they could avoid being petrified. But why didn't it work? You think you'll be fine if you don't look at the Blood Eye? Qin Feiyang shook his head. How naive. This was the most terrifying part of the Blood Eye. The petrification didn't depend on whether you looked at the Blood Eye or not, but whether the Blood Eye looked at you. As long as the Blood Eye stared at you, no matter how you tried to avoid it, you would be petrified. In the blink of an eye, Ryuko and the 3,000 incarnations' heads were almost petrified. However, facing an existence of this level, the petrification speed was still too slow. If they could be petrified instantly, even if they had 3,000 incarnations, it would be meaningless. But only living beings below the Dominator realm could be petrified instantly. This was the disadvantage of the battle soul. Like the Eye of Heaven, It also needed a long time to replicate the ultimate meaning. And a battle of this level was a race against time. In short, speed determined everything. If they couldn't be petrified instantly, the other party would have a chance to reverse the situation. After all, powerhouses who had reached this level all had rich combat experience and outstanding adaptability. And this was Madman's previous concern. So when he opened the blood eye, he immediately charged towards Ryuko and the 3,000 incarnations. As expected, Ryuko quickly reacted. Whether it was him or the 3,000 incarnations, the karma law emerged from their bodies. The last battle in the land of buried gods had already revealed his strength. The karma law had already comprehended the ultimate meaning. With the activation of the karma law, the petrified state of Ryuko and the 3,000 incarnations began to collapse. Their petrification was about to be completely removed, and the karma law's ultimate meaning was about to appear. At this moment, Madman charged over aggressively and seized the opportunity to strike with his palm. Boom! This palm contained the power of all evil that could destroy everything. The karma law's ultimate meaning that had yet to take form was shattered on the spot. Immediately after, the 3,000 incarnations were also shattered under Madman's giant palm. Ryuko also screamed miserably as his body was torn apart and dripping with blood. Like a meteorite, he smashed towards the ground below. There was a loud bang. Just as Ryuko smashed into the ground, his torn body shattered on the spot, and even his divine soul suffered a fatal injury. How is this possible? This scene left the blue-haired young man and his group dumbfounded. Ryuko, who had 3,000 incarnations, was actually not a match for this person? This must be a dream. This person not only had such ultimate power, but he also had the ability to petrify. And this petrification was unavoidable? What kind of monster was this? Chapter 39-40. Li Feng also had a look of shock as he said, "Big brother Qin, isn't this elder brother lunatic a little too strong?" "Yes, he is." Qin Feiyang nodded. No one could deny Madman's current strength. Because the source of all evil was an extreme power that allowed Madman to have extraordinary strength. Whether it was in the Divine Kingdom or the Sky Cloud realm, he could be called the king of the younger generation. Li Feng asked, "So even you are no match for him now?" "Not necessarily." Qin Feiyang shook his head. "What do you mean?" Li Feng was curious. Anyway, he admitted that he was no match for Madman now. Qin Feiyang smiled. "If there is a next time, Ryuko shouldn't lose to him." Li Feng was even more curious. First of all, before this, Ryuko didn't know about senior brother's blood eye, let alone its ability. It's equivalent to being defenseless. But senior brother is different. We have known each other for many years, and he is too familiar with the 3,000 incarnations. Moreover, senior brother must have deduced the scene of the battle with me countless times in his mind. Deducing time and time again, he won't be so passive when facing the 3,000 incarnations. He can even seize the opportunity in advance. For example, just now, when he opened the blood eye, he attacked Ryuko and the 3,000 incarnations. This is to seize the opportunity. When Ryuko reacted, he had already arrived in front of Ryuko. The 3,000 incarnations naturally solved the problem. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will be victorious in 100 battles. Qin Feiyang smiled secretly. "I see." Li Feng nodded and smiled. "It seems that Brother Madman still can't really defeat the 3,000 incarnations. This also depends on the situation. If it's one-on-one, as long as the opponent is prepared, it is indeed a bit difficult to defeat the 3,000 incarnations. But if it's a chaotic battle, the blood eye will definitely be able to display a terrifying effect. Because in a chaotic battle, although individual ability is also very important, the most important thing is the tacit understanding and cooperation between teammates." Qin Feiyang smiled. For example, if he were to fight with the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom in the front, the mad scientist would open his blood eye and petrify his opponent continuously. This would definitely affect the entire battle. Li Feng nodded in agreement. There was indeed a huge difference between a solo battle and a group battle. There was a moment of silence. Ryuko's divine soul flew out from the dust cloud. It was the soul of a purple gold divine dragon. He glared at the madman, his eyes filled with resentment as he roared, "Kill him!" The blue-haired young man and the others shuddered and came back to their senses. They immediately looked at Madman and unleashed their ultimate intents. Upon seeing this, Jiang Chen hurriedly said, "We can't continue. We should return to the Divine Kingdom immediately." "If you want to go back, go back." The blue-haired youth snorted coldly. They originally thought that since Long Chen wasn't here, they could easily take down these three people. However, they never imagined that just one lunatic would actually cause them to be almost completely annihilated. This was no longer something that could be described with the word disgrace. If they didn't kill this person today, then they, the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom, would inevitably become a joke. Jiang Chen and Jiang Xing looked at each other and made up their minds. They roared, "We will block his intents and leave the rest to you." The god race mark shone brightly. The space and devour laws instantly appeared out of nowhere, carrying monstrous power as they charged towards the madman. Join forces? Is that useful? The madman laughed loudly. That arrogant attitude made the group of people almost go crazy. However, it was undeniable that the madman did have the right to be arrogant now. Two ultimate intents were activated and blasted towards Jiang Chen and Jiang Xing's ultimate intents. At the same time, the blue-haired youth and the others waved their hands at the same time, and dozens of ultimate intents shot towards the madman. "All of you are trash." The madman smiled arrogantly, took a step forward, and punched out. The power of the source of all evil covered the sky and earth. An ultimate intent of the strongest law shattered on the spot. Then, another kick landed, and the ultimate intents of an ordinary law also collapsed on the spot. The power of a casual punch and kick far exceeded the ultimate intents. He was simply an invincible existence, making Jiang Chen and the others shudder in fear. Moreover, the madman's blood eye was still open. They still had to divide a portion of their power to resist the petrification of the blood eye. So strong. As expected of the ultimate power. Qin Feiyang whispered. He was now looking forward to the ultimate intents of the law of life and death. The power of the source of all evil was already so strong. Then what about the ultimate intents of the law of life and death? Would it be stronger than the source of all evil? But suddenly, a mysterious aura emerged. Qin Feiyang was taken aback and quickly looked at Ryuko. He was immediately surprised to find that a purple gold mark had appeared between Ryuko's eyebrows. This mark was a pocket-sized purple gold divine dragon, emitting a dazzling divine light. Moreover, it contained a terrifying divine might. To be able to force me to this step, you're indeed quite capable, but at the same time, you're destined to end up like this. Ryuko smiled sinisterly. The dragon's soul emitted a bright purple gold divine light, drowning out the world. Following that, a majestic life force surged out. An astonishing scene suddenly appeared in front of Qin Feiyang and Li Feng. They saw that Ryuko's shattered body was rapidly reconstructing his flesh and blood body. In less than 3 breaths, his body was restored to its original state. Moreover, after reconstructing his body, the mark between his eyebrows was like a blazing sun, even more eye-catching. "How is this possible?" Li Feng exclaimed. "The purple gold divine dragon clan has such an ability?" Qin Feiyang's face was also full of shock. Boom. After Ryuko reconstructed his body, a powerful aura surged out like a volcanic eruption. 3,000 clones were activated again. 3,000 ultimate intents of the law of karma appeared in just an instant. A terrifying divine might swept across the world. What's going on? Frenzy was in the middle of a killing spree when he suddenly sensed this terrifying aura. He immediately looked at Ryuko, and when he saw the ultimate intents of the 3,000 clones, his expression changed. How did this person reconstruct his body in the blink of an eye? Die for me. Ryuko smiled sinisterly. 3,000 ultimate intents of the law of karma immediately shattered the sky and charged towards Frenzy. Damn you, are you messing with me? Frenzy cursed loudly. Previously, Ryuko's body wasn't just injured, it was completely shattered. But he didn't expect it to be reconstructed so quickly. Is this a magic trick? Without hesitation, he immediately turned around and fled. The The blood eye could petrify living things, but it couldn't petrify the ultimate intense. Moreover, the ultimate intense had already appeared. Even if he petrified Ryuko and his 3,000 clones, it would be useless. So facing the 3,000 ultimate intense of the law of karma, even if he had the ultimate power of the source of all evil, he couldn't block it. Qin Dage. Li Feng came back to his senses and quickly shouted worriedly. Huff! Qin Feiyang took a deep breath. Originally, he wanted to continue preserving his strength, but now it seemed that he had to make a move. But what exactly was the mark on Ryuko's forehead? Why didn't he see him activate it when he fought with Long Chen last time? Haha. Are you still arrogant? This is the price you have to pay for angering Ryuko. The means of the various geniuses of the Divine Kingdom are not something an ant like you can imagine. Seeing this, the blue-haired youth and the others immediately laughed. Their faces were full of gloating. Frenzy smiled disdainfully and fled behind Qin Feiyang. He bared his teeth and said, "There's no other way. I can only leave it to you." Li Feng was also quite agile. Before Frenzy's voice faded, he had already hidden behind Qin Feiyang. No matter how conceited a person is, he probably wouldn't have the guts to confront the 3,000 ultimate intents of the law of karma. Seeing such a powerful Frenzy and Li Feng hiding behind Qin Feiyang at this moment, the group of people from the Divine Kingdom couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be that this strange man who had never revealed himself was in existence even stronger than Frenzy and Li Feng? Ryuko's eyebrows also raised slightly. From the beginning, he felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity from Qin Feiyang. But he couldn't figure it out. How could the people of the Sky Cloud realm give him such a feeling? 3,000 ultimate intents of the law of karma. That was equivalent to 3,000 sovereign divine weapons. Such divine power could be imagined. Enough to destroy everything. However, the group of people from the Divine Kingdom didn't see the slightest bit of nervousness on Qin Feiyang's face. Why was he so confident? Could it be that he had a superior sovereign divine weapon? But even if he had a superior sovereign divine weapon, it was impossible to block the 3,000 ultimate intents of the law of karma. However, at the next moment, a scene that they would never be able to accept appeared. Behind Qin Feiyang's group of 3, figures appeared out of thin air. These people's appearance and aura were exactly the same as Qin Feiyang's. And the number was exactly 3,000. What's going on? Aren't these 3,000 clones? The group of people from the Divine Kingdom looked at this scene with their mouths agape. Ryuko also had a look of disbelief on his face. This was definitely not true. These were clones. How could there be 3,000 clones? But the next moment, yet another scene that shocked them appeared. Those existences that they thought were just clones were actually the ultimate intents of the law of karma. I don't believe it. Ryuko looked at this scene, his body suddenly shook, and he immediately roared. From the current situation, it was already certain that these were 3,000 clones. But 3,000 clones was a secret technique of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan. Wait, could it be because the figure of the princess of the Divine Kingdom appeared in his mind? At the same time, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the ultimate intents of the law of karma activated by the 3,000 clones immediately turned into a torrent that roared toward the 3,000 ultimate intents of the law of karma. Rumble. As the two ultimate intents collided, a scene of destruction suddenly appeared. The entire core area instantly turned into chaos, as if the world had just been created. Moreover, this destructive power was still crazily spreading toward the inner area. For the land of buried gods, this was undoubtedly a prehistoric catastrophe. Chapter 39-41. What's going on? At the border, there was a layer of poisonous mist in a certain place. The old antiques of the Feng people were trapped in the poisonous mist. Their bodies were festering, and their auras were weak. When the terrifying ripples spread from the inner area to the central area, and then to the border, the space collapsed and the ground shattered. The group immediately changed color. No way. Not far away. Huo Wu and the old poison also turned around and stared at the apocalyptic scene. Their faces were filled with shock. They had already sensed the battle in the core area, but they didn't need to worry because the mad scientist was there. However, They didn't expect such a terrifying battle ripple to erupt. Moreover, they also sensed Qin Feiyang's aura. Let's go take a look, Huo Wu said, her face filled with worry. No. Qin Feiyang's aura is in the battle ripples. This means that Qin Feiyang has already personally taken action. As long as he's personally taking action, there won't be a problem. I think that we should go to the 2 exits of the Land of Buried Gods. I'm worried that this ripple will not only affect the Land of Buried Gods, but also the eastern and northern continents. So we have to quickly seal the exits. The old poison said in a deep voice. Huo Wu's face paled. If that was the case, then the 2 continents would be in a terrible situation, because the living beings of the 2 continents were too weak. Okay. You go to the eastern continent's exit. I have a space-time teleportation divine item. Go to the northern continent's exit. Huo Wu made a prompt decision. Huo Wu took out a space-time teleportation divine item. The eastern continent's exit was in front of them, but the northern continent's exit was on the other side. What about them? The old poison looked at Hua Dahong and the others. Hua Dahong and the others were already running toward the exit, but because of the poisonous mist, they were already heavily injured and weak. They weren't even as fast as a half-step imperishable realm cultivator. If they were left alone, they would definitely die under that ripple. Send them out. Huo Wu sighed and activated the space-time teleportation divine item. She ran in without looking back. What an impatient girl. Do you know that this old man has mastered the laws of space and time? The old poison monster shook his head. With a thought, the poison mist in the area surged back into his body like a tide. Following closely, he waved his hand again, and a gust of wind rose. Hua Dahong and his group were immediately swept up by the gale, and flew towards the exit. What happened? This scene caused Hua Dahong and the others to be bewildered. They were already in despair. But who would have thought that not only would the poisonous mist that had tormented them disappear in an instant, someone would even send them out of the Land of Buried Gods, who was helping them in the dark. Woo woo, accompanied by the deafening sound of the wind, the group of people quickly escaped, and the fierce wind also dissipated. What's wrong with you guys? Outside the entrance. When the other members of the Feng people saw this group of people in a sorry state, they immediately ran up to them out of concern. What are you doing here? Run. Immediately right now. The white-haired old man roared, looking at the anxious white-haired old man. The members of the Feng people couldn't help but raise their heads to look at the Land of Buried Gods. What a powerful battle fluctuation. Could it be that the people of the Divine Kingdom had come out? Thinking of this, everyone quivered. The elders of the various clans immediately swept up their clansmen and fled without looking back. Old ancestor, look, someone is coming out of the Land of Buried Gods. Suddenly, a young man roared. Everyone's gaze trembled as they turned to look at the entrance. They saw an old man in black standing there. It was the old poison monster. The old poison monster ignored the people of the Feng people. The laws of space and time rolled out, turning into huge waves that quickly sealed the entrance. His back looks a little familiar? The laws of space and time. This seems to have reached the level of the ultimate profound. Could it be that he was the one who saved us before? The white-haired old man and the group of old antiques were bewildered. The core area. Who are you? Why do you have the secret technique of my purple gold divine dragon clan? Ryuko stared at Qin Feiyang with a ferocious expression. Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang said. What? You are Qin Feiyang? Jiang Chun and Jiang Xing were shocked. Qin Feiyang? Long Zi, the blue-haired youth, and the others had suspicious looks on their faces, because they had died in the hands of Long Chun and the other 3 before they could walk out of the Land of Buried Gods, so they didn't know the name Qin Feiyang. Moreover, after the death of the God Clan woman, because she had seen the white-eyed wolf, frenzy, and fire dance in the demonic palace, and because of her hatred for the white-eyed wolf, she had completely forgotten about Qin Feiyang. Therefore, she didn't mention Qin Feiyang. So now, the name Qin Feiyang hadn't spread in the Divine Kingdom yet. But Jiang Chun, Jiang Xing, and the hundreds of geniuses of the God Clan were different. They had been in the Sky Cloud realm for so long, and they were no stranger to the name Qin Feiyang. Moreover, it seemed that he was a very amazing person, but they had never had the chance to see him with their own eyes. That's right. It's me. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. It's really this person. 3,000 incarnations. Jiang Chen sized up Qin Feiyang, his face full of shock, and said in a deep voice, "So you are so strong, you really live up to your reputation. You flatter me." Compared to Long Qin, Yun Ziang, Li Feng, senior brother, and Golden Wings Wolf King, I'm still a little bit worse. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Jiang Chen clenched his hands. Was he being sarcastic? With 3,000 incarnations, how could he be worse than Long Chen and the others? At the same time, Ryuko stared at Qin Feiyang, his brows tightly knitted. Qin Feiyang, Qin Xiaotian. 3,000 incarnations. Suddenly, a cold light surged in his eyes as he shouted, "What is your relationship with Qin Xiaotian?" Madman and Li Feng looked at each other with a trace of a sinister smile in their eyes. Wasn't Qin Xiaotian Qin Feiyang? Our relationship. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a hint of ridicule, and said with a smile, "I am his brother." Brother? Ryuko was slightly taken aback. He sized up Qin Feiyang for a moment, and said in a deep voice, "Could it be that you also have the power of the purple gold dragon blood?" "What do you think?" Qin Feiyang looked at him with a smile. "Who cares if you have the power of the purple gold dragon blood or not? Perfect. If I can't find Qin Xiaotian, then I'll settle the score with you first. I'll let you see my true strength. Despair." Ryuko grinned. Accompanied by a powerful aura, the 3,000 incarnations behind him surged with the law of destruction. The next moment, the ultimate profound destruction eye appeared in the sky. Qin Feiyang was surprised. The ultimate profound of the law of destruction. The ultimate profound of the law of cause and effect. He actually still held back last time. But on second thought, even if this person had activated the ultimate profound of the law of destruction last time, facing Long Chen's God's domain, it didn't seem to have any effect, because the God's domain could nullify all the ultimate profound. If it wasn't for Long Chen last time, the sky cloud boundary would have been razed to the ground by me. Ryuko chuckled. The 3,000 incarnations behind him once again activated the ultimate profound of the law of cause and effect. 3,000 incarnations, 2 ultimate profound. That was a total of 6,000 ultimate profound. What kind of scene was this? It could be described as invincible. Jiang Chen, the blue-haired youth, and the others couldn't help but have a thick sense of ridicule on their faces. Since they both had 3,000 incarnations, the competition was naturally the number of ultimate profound. They didn't believe that this Qin Feiyang also mastered 2 ultimate profound. That was really embarrassing. Qin Feiyang really did master 2 ultimate profound. The law of cause and law of light. However, the law of light obviously wasn't useful now. But don't forget, he still had the law of life and death. Although the law of life and death was only an ultimate profound, the ultimate profound of the law of life and death was already able to compete with the ultimate profound of the strongest law. Raise the sky cloud boundary to the ground. What a despicable heart, Qin Feiyang murmured and shook his head. But I'm afraid you don't have the ability. Arrogant. Kill for me. Ryuko roared. 6,000 ultimate profound of the strongest law suddenly turned into a torrent, tearing apart the chaotic zone and crazily attacking Qin Feiyang. Old Qin, do you need me and Li Feng to activate our ultimate profound and replicate it for you? Madman secretly said. No need. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then wouldn't that expose your law of life and death? Madman frowned. Sooner or later, it will be exposed. Qin Feiyang faintly smiled and looked at the 3,000 incarnations, saying, Let's begin. Boom. As Qin Feiyang's voice fell, the 3,000 incarnations immediately activated the ultimate profound of the law of cause and law of life and death in unison. Terrifying divine items flooded out in all directions, covering the sky and covering the earth. Kill. The 3,000 incarnations roared and immediately attacked with 6,000 profound. The God Race group looked at the ultimate profound of the law of life and death, the life and death dominion, with bewilderment. What was that? 3,000 life and death dominion enveloped all directions. The power of life and death condensed into giant dragons, their divine might shaking the world. Although it was an ultimate profound, it wasn't at a disadvantage when it collided with Ryuko's two ultimate profound. Brother, is this the legendary law of life and death? In the distance, a man and a woman stood in the wind and waves, overlooking the battlefield from afar. It was Long Chen and Long Qin. Yes, at this moment, Long Chen also clenched his fists, his eyes burning as he nodded. Yes, this is the law of life and death, the ultimate profound, the life and death dominion. This guy actually comprehended the law of life and death. It was too surprising. He didn't expect it at all. The law of life and death really exists in this world. Long Qin murmured when he heard this, and a trace of desire gradually appeared in his eyes. It was just a supreme profound, but it could compete with the ultimate profound of the strongest law. From this, it could be seen how strong the law of life and death was. If it was the ultimate profound of the law of life and death, it would definitely be a crushing situation. He shouldn't have comprehended the ultimate profound yet, Long Chen whispered. But even so, it was still enough to make people envious and jealous. Look at the Sky Cloud realm. How many creatures were there? Look at the monstrous geniuses of the Sky Cloud realm. Since ancient times, how many monstrous geniuses had been born? But no one could comprehend the law of life and death. So much so that the law of life and death became an ethereal legend. One could imagine how difficult it was to comprehend it. This guy was indeed a terrifying person. Chapter 3942. Rumble. The ultimate meaning of the two sides constantly collided, and a destructive aura flooded all directions. Not only the Long Chen siblings, but even Madman was envious. Brother Madman, you don't have to be envious. The one who should be envious is me. Li Feng smiled bitterly. One grasped the source of all evil, and the other grasped the law of life and death. Both were the ultimate power in the world. He thought that with the puppet true body, not to mention Qin Feiyang, even Madman wouldn't be his opponent. After all, Qin Feiyang had 3,000 incarnations. No matter how arrogant he was, he definitely wouldn't dare to compete with Qin Feiyang. But Madman was different. Madman's strongest means were the ultimate meaning of the law of space and time, as well as the ultimate meaning of the law of thunder and the law of slaughter. With his puppet true body, it was enough to fight Madman. However, he never expected that when Madman returned from the Nether King's hell, he would show such terrifying strength. It wasn't an exaggeration. His puppet true body would only be crushed in the face of Madman. I don't want to be envious. But it's hard not to be envious of the law of life and death. Madman shook his head. Although the source of all evil and the law of life were both ultimate powers, he had a hunch that after Qin Feiyang comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, he might be stronger than the source of all evil. This seems to be, looking at the terrifying life and death domain. The blue-haired youth murmured as if he had thought of something. His face was instantly filled with disbelief. It's the law of life and death. Jiang Chen swallowed his saliva and helped the blue-haired youth say this sentence. As soon as these words came out, the others, including Ryuko, suddenly trembled. The law of life and death. How was this possible? Even in the Divine Kingdom, the law of life and death was a legendary existence. The Sky Cloud realm, a mere low-level civilization, was not even 1/10 of the Divine Kingdom. How could it give birth to such a monster? This was something that many people found hard to accept. Yes, this is the law of life and death. I have seen it in an ancient book. According to the records of the law of life and death, it is exactly the same as Qin Feiyang's life and death domain. Who the hell is this person? Why does he have such a terrifying talent? He can even comprehend the law of life and death? The eyes of those from the Divine Kingdom trembled. It was like a dream. It was too unreal. Whoosh. Ryuko shifted his gaze from the life and death dominion to Qin Feiyang, his eyes brimming with jealousy. Even he, the prodigy of the Divine Kingdom, and a direct descendant of the purple-gold divine dragon race, had not comprehended the law of life and death. How could an ant from an inferior civilization be so outstanding? He refused to accept it. This person must die. Otherwise, when he comprehended the ultimate profundity of the law of life and death, he would be even more terrifying. With this thought in mind, Ryuko's killing intent surged. He stared at Qin Feiyang and said, "Do you dare to abandon the agreement between the monarch and Qin Xiaotian and fight to the death? Let go of the agreement and fight to the death?" Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Madman and Li Feng looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. Did letting go of the agreement mean that he could use the sovereign divine weapon? "Answer me. Do you dare?" Ryuko shouted coldly with a provocative look on his face. "Not interested." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Ryuko frowned. He thought that Qin Feiyang would definitely nod and agree. After all, how could a prodigy of the Tianyin realm be afraid? But he had never thought that he would refuse so straightforwardly. A fight to the death is usually carried out on equal terms. But now, do you think we're equal? Qin Feiyang said lightly. So that's what you're thinking. Don't worry. I'm still a reasonable person. Although the Divine Kingdom is superior to the Tianyin realm, I'm willing to put down my pride and have a fair fight with you. Ryuko sneered. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Madman, Li Feng and Long Chun and his sister in the distance were also stunned. Was there something wrong with this person's brain? Did he think that Qin Feiyang's equality was the difference in status? He even put on a pitiful attitude. Who was he trying to show? Where did this sense of superiority come from? I don't know if it's my ability to express myself or your ability to understand. What I want to say is that you left your divine soul in the Divine Kingdom. Even if you die in the Tianyin realm, you can be resurrected again. Is this a fight to the death? If you still don't understand, I'll explain it to you in simpler terms. I don't want to do such meaningless things. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Ryuko suddenly became angry. He didn't make it clear, and now he was mocking him? Since it's a fight to the death, then show your courage and have a real fight to the death. If you don't dare, then I advise you not to mention it, lest you become a joke. Qin Feiyang mocked mercilessly. What was the point of leaving his divine soul in the Divine Kingdom in a fight to the death? You. When Ryuko heard these words, he stared at Qin Feiyang angrily. This wasn't just mocking him, but also humiliating him. Stop being arrogant here. You dare say you didn't leave your divine soul in advance to save your life? The blue-haired youth sneered. Qin Feiyang's eyes turned and fell on the blue-haired youth. His face was full of ridicule. What's with your look? The blue-haired youth clenched his hands. Obviously, I'm mocking you. I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with an ignorant person like you. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Bastard, you're too arrogant. The blue-haired youth was furious. It's not that we're arrogant, but you guys are too useless. You might as well ask around. We've been in the Tianyin realm for so many years. When did we do such a cowardly thing? Not to mention you guys. Even when facing your king, we didn't leave behind half of our divine soul in advance. Madman laughed. Who are you calling useless? The blue-haired youth glared at Madman. I said your IQ is low, but you don't believe me. Is there anyone else here besides you guys? Haha, Madman laughed loudly. His ridicule wasn't concealed in the slightest. Boom. The blue-haired youth's hair stood on end as his three ultimate profound meanings roared out and charged at Madman. You still dare to make a move? It seems that low IQ can no longer be used to describe you. You have no brain at all. Madman's eyes were full of contempt. The two ultimate profound meanings of the space-time law and the destruction law directly crushed over. Stop talking nonsense. Qin Feiyang, do you dare to fight? Ryuko roared, his hostility overflowing. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Not finished yet. Fine. I'll let this person recognize the reality. All right. Today my mood is pretty good, so I'll play with you. Take out your strongest means because I will only give you one chance. Qin Feiyang said. An eye for an eye, displaying the attitude of pity and charity to the fullest. There was a sinister look in Ryuko's eyes. Wait and see. You will definitely regret it. Suddenly, he spat out a mouthful of dragon blood. What? He is actually so angry that he vomited blood. He is too weak. Madman laughed loudly. Ryuko glanced at Madman and remained silent. With a wave of his hand, a mighty aura surged out from the purple-gold dragon blood and went straight to the door of the Divine Kingdom. What is he doing? Li Feng frowned. I don't know. Madman shook his head. At this moment, the confrontation between the 3,000 avatars of both sides had ended. A total of 12,000 ultimate profound meanings were all shattered. Immediately afterward, Ryuko did not make another move. He silently looked at Qin Feiyang, seemingly waiting for something. Bang! Very soon, a terrifying aura surged out from the door of the Divine Kingdom. This is... Qin Feiyang's pupils constricted. What is it? Madman was surprised. The ruler's weapon of the Divine Kingdom, Divine Dragon Sword. Qin Feiyang stared at the door of the Divine Kingdom. That's right. This was the aura of the Divine Dragon Sword. It turned out that Ryuko was summoning the Divine Dragon Sword to help him. Divine Dragon Sword? Madman was shocked and secretly said, I seem to have heard that this Divine Dragon Sword is a high-level ruler's weapon? At that time, when Qin Feiyang changed his name to Qin Xiaotian and fought with the Divine Dragon Sword, Madman happened to be integrating the memories and inheritance of his previous life in the Moon of Evil. Therefore, he had never seen this high-level ruler's weapon with his own eyes. And Qin Feiyang nodded. I'll go. Are they serious? Madman frowned. Longqin also stared at the door of the Divine Kingdom and asked with a solemn expression, Brother, will Qin Feiyang and the others be okay? You are actually worried about them? Longchen was stunned. Longqin was slightly taken aback and immediately concealed the awkwardness in his expression. He smiled and said, Aren't we fighting side by side now? It's normal to be worried about them. Is that so? Longchen sized up this little sister of his gaze deep in thought. Clang. Accompanied by a loud sound, a light flashed out from the door of the Divine Kingdom. If it wasn't the Divine Dragon Sword, then what was it? Longchen raised his head and looked at the Divine Dragon Sword. He smiled and said, Don't worry. If it was us, we would definitely be in trouble. But now, the Divine Dragon Sword is facing Qin Feiyang. What's so great about it? Longqin glanced at Qin Feiyang and snorted secretly. Swish. The Divine Dragon Sword instantly landed in front of Ryuko and asked, Why did you summon me? Ryuko pointed at Qin Feiyang below and said respectfully, I want to fight to the death with this person. Please lend me a hand. What? You want me to fight? Don't forget that we have an agreement with Qin Xiaotian. The Divine Dragon Sword was shocked. We have an agreement. The fight will not be affected by the agreement. Ryuko sneered. I see. The Divine Dragon Sword heard and heaved a sigh of relief. He said, I would like to see who is so confident. He immediately shrouded Qin Feiyang with his divine thought. What? Purple gold dragon blood. The moment his divine thought shrouded Qin Feiyang, the Divine Dragon Sword turned pale with fright. Purple gold dragon blood. Jiang Chun and the blue-haired youth heard this and immediately looked at Qin Feiyang with shock on their faces. He actually had the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon. In that case, Qin Feiyang must be the descendant of the princess of the Divine Kingdom. He really has the purple gold dragon blood. No wonder I felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity from him. Ryuko couldn't help but frown. The fact that a human had the purple gold dragon blood flowing in his body was a disgrace to the purple gold divine dragon clan. Chapter 3943. What's your relationship with Qin Xiaotian? The Divine Dragon Sword asked. His tone was filled with anger. Back then on Sky Cloud Island, if it wasn't for the Lord of the Divine Kingdom appearing at the critical moment, it would have been destroyed. He said before that he and Qin Xiaotian are brothers. Now it seems that it's true. They both have the bloodline power of the purple gold divine dragon. They might even be blood brothers. Ryuko said in a deep voice. When the Divine Dragon Sword heard this, a monstrous sharpness suddenly roared out. Since you're Qin Xiaotian's brother, then go to hell. As his voice fell, the sharpness swept across the sky and headed toward Qin Feiyang. At the same time, the 3,000 incarnations behind Ryuko once again activated two ultimates. That terrifying divine power surged like waves in the core area. Qin Feiyang glanced at the Divine Dragon Sword, then looked at Ryuko and shook his head. I've been waiting for you for so long to get the Divine Dragon Sword to help. The Divine Dragon Sword is enough to kill you. Ryuko laughed wildly. The 6,000 ultimates activated by the 3,000 incarnations were like a torrent, rolling toward Qin Feiyang. Let me give you a piece of advice. Be low-key because the higher you jump, the more painful it will be when you fall. Li Feng sneered. Don't be in a hurry to die. After we kill Qin Feiyang, I'll take good care of you. Ryuko sneered. The 3 people in front of him had to die. Moreover, as long as the 3 of them died, only Long Chun and Long Qin would be left in the Sky Cloud realm. When the time came, even if Long Chun had a heaven-defying god's domain, facing the countless geniuses of the Divine Kingdom, he couldn't do it alone. Take care of me? Sure. I'll wait for you to take care of me. Li Feng smiled coldly. You don't know that the Qin Xiaotian you've always cared about is right in front of you. You think the Divine Dragon Sword can turn the situation around? What a joke. Cough cough. Madman coughed dryly and reminded. Kid, don't mess around with seniority. If you are his father, what does old Qin have to call you? Ah. Li Feng turned to look at Madman. After pondering for a moment, he suddenly slapped his head and looked at Qin Feiyang with an embarrassed smile. Qin Dage, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to take advantage of you. This Ryuko was the son of the eldest brother of the princess of the Divine Kingdom. If he were to become his father, wouldn't he be in the same generation as the princess of the Divine Kingdom? In that case, wouldn't Qin Dage have to call him ancestor? Too careless. How could he take advantage of Qin Dage? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at Li Feng, speechless. He raised his head and looked at the surging sharpness, as well as the 6,000 supreme profound meanings. Boom. At the rear. Along with terrifying divine might, the ultimate profundities of the law of karma and the ultimate profundities of the law of life and death instantly appeared above the heads of the 3,000 avatars. This divine dragon sword was bewildered. Why did it look like the ultimate profundities of the law of life, the life and death divine domain? His eyes must be playing tricks on him. In a place like the Sky Cloud realm, how could someone comprehend the law of life and death? Boom. But soon, the scene in front of him subverted his thoughts. The life and death divine domain followed the ultimate profundities of the law of karma and shattered its sharpness with irresistible force. Then, it collided with the ultimate profundities of the 3,000 avatars of Ryuko. The strength displayed by the life and death divine domain was not inferior to the ultimate profundities of the law of life and death. How is this possible? It's really the law of life and death. Divine Dragon Sword muttered to himself. What kind of monster was this to be able to comprehend this legendary law? He never thought that there was such a terrifying person hidden in the Sky Cloud realm. Moreover, it was a young man. The law of life and death was known as the strongest law in the world. It was a kind of ultimate power in this world. For example, now, just the ultimate profundities alone could compete with the ultimate profundities. If it was the ultimate profundities, how powerful would it be? This was definitely a threat. When this child comprehended the ultimate profundities, it would inevitably bring a huge catastrophe to the Divine Kingdom. Divine Dragon Sword, take advantage of this opportunity to kill him quickly. Ryuko roared. As long as he delayed Qin Feiyang's 3,000 avatars, then with the strength of Divine Dragon Sword, it would be easy to kill Qin Feiyang. Even if Madman and Li Feng helped, it would be meaningless. Clang. Divine Dragon Sword quivered and immediately recovered. Sword energy surged as it slashed at Qin Feiyang. This sword could be said to be destroying the world. No one could block it. Even if a god descended to the mortal world, he would die. However, Qin Feiyang and the other 2 didn't have any nervousness on their faces. Qin Dage, they have been arrogant for so long, it's time to let them despair. The corner of Li Feng's mouth lifted as he pursed a sinister smile. Then don't hold back and activate your ultimate profundities. Qin Feiyang smiled. Madman and Li Feng looked at each other. 6 ultimate profundities instantly appeared out of nowhere. Li Feng, Spacetime Law, Slaughter Law. Madman, Spacetime Law, Destruction Law, Thunder Law, Slaughter Law. What are they doing? With just these 6 ultimate profundities, they want to compete with Divine Dragon Sword? What a joke. This is too naive. Ryuko and the others in the sky sneered. Who is the naive one? Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at the group of people. His eyes suddenly became as sharp as a blade as he shouted, "Activate the Eye of Heaven!" Roar! In this place, a series of deafening dragon roars immediately resounded. Behind each of the 3,000 avatars, a purple gold dragon soul rushed out. The terrifying dragon might shook all directions. This is the purple gold dragon soul? Ryuko's face suddenly froze. The others also had a face full of shock. Especially Divine Dragon Sword. Because this scene wasn't unfamiliar to it. Back then in the Sky Cloud realm, when facing Qin Xiaotian, the same scene happened. 3,000 avatars, purple gold dragon soul, and the Eye of Heaven. Could it be he is Qin Xiaotian? Divine Dragon Sword was bewildered. Just as the group of people were bewildered, the glabella of the 3,000 purple gold dragon souls split open one after another, revealing a third eye. The Eye of Heaven had appeared. It's really the Eye of Heaven. Divine Dragon Sword couldn't help but tremble. The Eye of Heaven was the strongest battle soul in the world, possessing the ability to defy the heavens. The 3,000 avatars and the purple gold dragon blood could appear on a second person, but the Eye of Heaven absolutely couldn't appear on a second person. Especially the Eye of Heaven that could replicate the ultimate profundities. This was unique. Therefore, the person called Qin Feiyang in front of them and the Qin Xiaotian in front of them were actually the same person. It was also at this moment. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the 3,000 avatars, Madman, and Li Feng instantly disappeared without a trace, including the two's ultimate profundities. They were sent to the Black Tortoise realm. Because the Eye of Heaven needed a very long time to replicate the ultimate profundities. It was just like Madman's blood eye petrification. But if it was in the Black Tortoise realm, then there was no need to consider it. A 5,000-year time array could completely connect with the outside world. Because half a breath's time outside was half a day in the Black Tortoise realm. Half a day had already been replicated. Moreover, although the speed of replicating the ultimate profundities was very slow, it didn't take half a day. We can't fight anymore, let's go. Divine Dragon Sword's expression changed when it saw the 3,000 avatars and Madman disappear. It hurriedly roared at Ryuko and the others. What's the situation? Divine Dragon Sword is actually afraid. The group of geniuses from the Divine Kingdom couldn't help but be surprised. Quick! Divine Dragon Sword roared and charged toward the group. Since it's a battle to the death, then let's fight to the end. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and instantly appeared in the sky. One man could hold the pass against 10,000 men. Even though he was alone now, Divine Dragon Sword couldn't help but feel panic. You're breaking the agreement. Divine Dragon Sword roared. I'm breaking the agreement? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Can you stop pretending? Aren't you Qin Xiaotian? Divine Dragon Sword said gloomily. What? He's Qin Xiaotian. Ryuko and the others looked at Qin Feiyang in surprise. That's right. The Eye of Heaven is unique. Now that he has opened the Eye of Heaven, who else could it be but Qin Xiaotian? Divine Dragon Sword said. Qin Feiyang shook his head. With a thought, the 3,000 avatars, Madman, and Li Feng appeared. Above the 3,000 avatars, there were numerous ultimate profundities floating densely. Previously, Madman and Li Feng had activated 6 ultimate profundities. Now the Eye of Heaven had replicated a total of 18,000 ultimate profundities. Among them, there were 9,000 ultimate profundities. 9,000 ultimate profundities of ordinary profundities. What kind of concept was this? The terrifying aura could topple mountains and overturn seas. The entire Sky Cloud realm could feel this aura at this moment. This is the Eye of Heaven? Ryuko and the others murmured as they stared at the forehead of the purple gold dragon soul. Their eyes were filled with horror. Despair? Fear? Regret? Don't worry, it's not over yet. The 3,000 avatars laughed again and again. Boom. Accompanied by a terrifying aura, they activated the ultimate profundities of the law of cause and effect and the supreme profundities of the law of life and death. The Eye of Heaven wouldn't hinder them from activating their own profundities. In other words, while replicating with the Eye of Heaven, they could also activate their own ultimate profundities. Replicating 18,000 profundities and activating another 6,000 profundities. As a result, above the 3,000 avatars, There were a total of 24,000 profundities. At this moment, Ryuko and the others finally realized the seriousness of the problem. They also finally realized how terrifying a person they had provoked. 3,000 avatars, plus the Eye of Heaven. This method was simply suffocating. Divine Dragon Sword shouted anxiously. Qin Xiaotian, you'd better not make a move, otherwise you will be breaking the agreement. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Why did he say that he was breaking the agreement again? Wait a minute. Divine Dragon Sword couldn't have thought that he was an old monster, right? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. Looking at Divine Dragon Sword, he shook his head and said, You still haven't reacted? There is no one called Qin Feiyang in this world. It has always been me, Qin Feiyang. No. Divine Dragon Sword pondered for a moment, then said, No matter what your name is, in short, we agreed that the older generation cannot make a move. Older generation? Qin Feiyang didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Sure enough, he thought that he was an old antique. Chapter 3944. What the hell? Someone actually said that Qin Dage is from the older generation? Li Feng was also extremely astonished. It's reasonable to say that I'm an old antique, but this guy... Madman glanced at Qin Feiyang and muttered, It's indeed a little funny. Bastard. This is simply bullying. You're obviously an old monster. Yet you're still pretending to be a young man. Do you have any shame? Remember, you broke the agreement first. Wait. My Divine Kingdom's army will be here soon. But the blue-haired youth and the others believed it and couldn't help but curse. Qin Feiyang glanced at the group of people, the corner of his mouth twitching as he asked, How do you know that I'm an old monster? Even the Divine Dragon Sword said you are. How can it be false? The blue-haired youth sneered. Qin Feiyang's current mood was a bit messy. No matter how he looked at it, he didn't look like someone from the older generation. Madman shook his head and said, Sure enough, a group of fools without eyesight. Ask Jiang Chun and the others. They have been lurking in the sky cloud realm for so long, they should have already investigated our background. They immediately looked at Jiang Chun, Jiang Xing, and the other god race geniuses. Jiang Chun looked at Qin Feiyang gloomily and nodded. He is from the older generation of the sky cloud realm. Qin Feiyang and the other two were stunned. He actually lied in broad daylight? Brother, what does he mean? In the distance, Long Qin also looked at Jiang Chun suspiciously. Is there a need to ask? He has been in the sky cloud realm for so many years, more or less. He must know some details about Qin Feiyang and the others. The reason why he lied is purely for revenge. Because the white-eyed wolf deprived that god race woman of her cultivation in the demon palace. Madman was also in the demon palace, causing Jiang Chun and the others to run away with their tails between their legs. Naturally, they would have resentment in their hearts. Long Chun shook his head and laughed. It seems that the people of the Divine Kingdom are not that great after all. When Long Qin heard that, his face was full of disdain. His character is indeed not good. However, this kind of lie can only be concealed for a while. After all, no one in the sky cloud realm doesn't know about Qin Feiyang's situation. Just ask around and you'll find out. Long Chun shook his head. This Jiang Chun was just trying to be smart. What do we do now? They insist that Qin Feiyang is from the older generation. If that Qin Feiyang makes a move, I'm afraid it will be a bit. Long Qin frowned. There's no need to think so much. Don't you know Qin Feiyang's character? When it's time to act, he definitely won't hesitate. Moreover, this time, Pei Dason almost died in their hands. Long Chun smiled faintly. They even knew about Pei Dason. It was obvious that the dragons had spies hiding in the core area. Did you hear that? Even Jiang Chun said you're an old antique. Do you still want to quibble now? The blue-haired youth and others glared at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang glanced at them, looked at Jiang Chun, and shook his head. The so-called high and mighty god clan turns out to be like this. Jiang Chun frowned. Fine. I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. Whether I'm an old antique or a young man. In short, today, none of you will be able to return to the Divine Kingdom. As Qin Feiyang's voice fell, a murderous aura filled the air. Shenlong Jian's heart sank. The blue-haired youth and his group suddenly panicked. Especially Jiang Chun. He thought that by saying so, he could make Qin Feiyang worry, but he didn't expect that it would backfire. Because at first, Qin Feiyang only said that he would keep the blue-haired youth, because the blue-haired youth had tortured Pei Dason. But now, he didn't intend to let them go. At this moment, Qin Feiyang opened his mouth again. Moreover, didn't this Ryuko of yours always want to challenge Qin Xiaotian? Now that I'm helping him, shouldn't you thank me? Don't try to touch our bottom line. Shenlong Jian said angrily. Bottom line? The last time you came to the Sky Cloud realm, how many innocent creatures were poisoned by you? Take hell as an example. All the creatures that year died in the hands of Ji Yunhai. Now you still have the face to talk to me about the bottom line? It's not us who are touching your bottom line. It's you people who think you're high and mighty, have been touching the bottom line of our Sky Cloud realm. Let me tell you, last time you were lucky enough to escape, but this time, you won't be so lucky. Qin Feiyang stared at Shenlong Jian, murderous intent surging in his eyes. As his voice fell, the 3,000 incarnations roared. Kill. The 24,000 profound meanings in the sky suddenly rushed toward the group of people. The terrifying aura made the group of people fall into despair on the spot. Especially Shenlong Jian. Ryuko, Jiangchen, and the others left their divine souls in the divine kingdom. Even if they died, it didn't matter. But it was different. This was its main body. If it died here, then it would be completely hopeless. So, it frantically recovered, trying to tear open a gap and escape back to the divine kingdom. But these were 24,000 ultimate profound meanings. Even if it was a high-grade sovereign weapon, it couldn't compete. No, not to mention competing, it didn't even have the chance to resist. Accompanied by a loud crack, the moment it collided with the 24,000 ultimate profound meanings, its main body shattered on the spot. Ryuko's 3,000 incarnations also activated their ultimate profound meanings once again. The blue-haired young man and his companions, Jiangchen and his companion, and the group of God Clan geniuses all activated their own profundities, trying desperately to fight their way out. However, no matter how hard they tried, in front of the 24,000 ultimate profound meanings, they were as vulnerable as dead wood. It was like a group of tiny ants facing a giant elephant. The giant elephant only needed to raise its foot to trample a large group of them to death. Qin Feiyang, just wait to suffer the wrath of the divine kingdom. The blue-haired youth roared. The group of people's bodies were torn apart one after another. Whether it was their sea of energy or sea of consciousness, they were all fatally injured. Shenlong Jian had also been shattered into pieces. Qin Feiyang glanced at the situation of Shenlong Jian and Ryuko. Their sea of energy was destroyed, and their sea of consciousness was almost collapsed. Shenlong Jian couldn't exert any power either. Stop! Qin Feiyang waved his hand at the 3,000 incarnations. The 3,000 incarnations waved their hands, and the ultimate profound meanings that were attacking Shenlong Jian and Ryuko suddenly stopped. Why didn't you kill us? The group of people was surprised. As I said, I want you to stay. Qin Feiyang took a step forward and grabbed the blue-haired youth's neck. He sneered, especially you. If I don't take care of you, how can I repay the care you gave to Pei Dason? Looking at Qin Feiyang's gaze, the blue-haired youth suddenly felt a chill down his spine. Madman and Li Feng also rushed over. Madman grabbed Ryuko's neck and laughed. I want to see what your father will use to redeem you. Li Feng, on the other hand, grabbed Jiangchen and slapped him hard across the face. You're courting death. Jiangchen roared. Pa! But before he finished, Li Feng punched Jiangchen's mouth. With a scream, Jiangchen's mouth became a bloody mess, and his teeth were also shattered. I'm courting death. What can you do? A trash like you who doesn't even dare to speak the truth. How dare you stand on top of our heads and behave atrociously? Li Feng's face was full of disdain. Jiangchen's eyes were filled with hatred. Don't worry, you'll suffer later. Li Feng laughed and looked at Qin Feiyang. Qin Dage, do you want to keep all of them? Qin Feiyang glanced at the group of people and laughed. Except for Jiangxing, Jiangchen, and Ryuko, there's no need for the others. Understood. Li Feng nodded and grabbed Jiangchen's universe ring, crushing it. Then he charged toward the group of God race geniuses. Screams sounded one after another. Li Feng was like a demon king. In less than 10 breaths, hundreds of god-race geniuses died without a burial place. Although they wouldn't really die, this time was enough to leave a shadow in their hearts for the rest of their lives. At the same time, Qin Feiyang and Madman also made a move, crushing the universe rings of Jiangchen and Ryuko. This was to prevent them from taking pills to repair their qi. At last, the three of them walked in front of Ryuko. Ryuko's body was shattered and blood flowed out. He stared at the three. His bloodstained face was filled with killing intent. Strange. Why isn't the mark between your eyebrows helping you heal your injuries? Madman was suspicious. Ryuko was silent. Li Feng looked at the mark on Ryuko's forehead and asked suspiciously, "Is there some kind of restriction?" "Maybe." Madman nodded. After thinking for a while, he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "We can't let this person go to the soul-sealing valley. If he uses the power of the mark to heal his injuries, it will be a disaster for the Black Tortoise world." Qin Feiyang frowned. It made sense. If only Brother Wolf was here. Li Feng shook his head. Qin Feiyang and Madman turned their heads to look at Li Feng. If Brother Wolf is here, he can take away his cultivation, or even take away all of it, turning him into a mortal. At that time, even if the mark helps him heal his injuries, what's the use? Li Feng chuckled. What? Ryuko's eyes trembled. If that was the case, he might as well die. That makes sense. Madman's eyes lit up. He immediately looked at Li Feng and said, "Go to the Sky Cloud world immediately and see how long it will take for White-Eyed Wolf to come out." Okay. Li Feng immediately opened a space-time tunnel and left. "Don't go too far," Ryuko roared. He panicked, completely panicked. If his cultivation was really taken away, then even if his soul was left in the Divine Kingdom, even if he could save his life, what was the point? Chapter 39:45. At the same time, Jiangchen and the others watched as Li Feng left. Their expressions were filled with fear. They weren't afraid of death at all, because their divine soul was in the Divine Kingdom anyway. But if their cultivation was really stripped, then even if their divine soul was in the Divine Kingdom, it would be useless. Jiang Yunshuang was the best example. After being stripped of a cultivation realm by the White-Eyed Wolf, even if he was reborn, he would still be a perfect dominator, and would have to comprehend another law. Not to mention being stripped of all his cultivation. Although Qin Feiyang and the other two only said to strip Ryuko of his cultivation, who knew if they would do something to them, they would rather die than have their cultivation taken away by the White-Eyed Wolf. Thinking of this, Jiang Chen and Jiang Xing looked at each other. Gritting their teeth, they raised their arms at the same time and slapped their forehead. They wanted to destroy their own divine soul. But Qin Feiyang and Madman seemed to have expected this scene. A majestic aura surged out. The two of them were immediately imprisoned. Want to commit suicide? Is that possible? Madman looked at the two with ridicule. You can't do this to us. Jiangchen roared. Give us a reason. Madman looked at the two with a smile. Jiangchen said in a deep voice, We are the geniuses of the god race. If you dare to strip our cultivation, the Divine King will not let you go. Divine King? Madman was stunned. Wasn't there already a king? Why would there be a Divine King? The Divine King is the ruler of our god race. Putting aside the 3,000 incarnations, the Divine King's strength is not inferior to the king. Jiangchen sneered. So that's how it is. Divine King. What a majestic name. You almost scared me to death. Madman laughed, his face full of mockery. He actually used some bullshit Divine King to scare them? Was this young man stupid? Did he think they would be scared? If they only had this bit of courage, how could they survive until today? Don't be too proud. You will definitely regret this. Jiangchen roared. I really don't know if we will regret it, but I know that you will definitely regret it later. A cold light flashed in the madman's eyes. Then he looked at the blue-haired youth and the others and laughed. Don't think about committing suicide like them. I won't give you a chance. Their faces turned pale. Even the right to commit suicide had been taken away. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but inwardly sigh as he swept his gaze over the core area. War was truly ruthless. If nothing unexpected happened, the entire land of buried gods would have been razed to the ground by now. Fortunately, there were no living beings in the land of the buried gods. Wait a minute. Fire dance and old poison seem to be in the land of buried gods. However, after giving the matter some thought, Sherfong realized that the two of them weren't weak. The moment the battle broke out, they had most likely left the land of buried gods. Let's go to the Black Tortoise world. With a wave of his hand, Qin Feiyang swept up the group of people and the fragments of the divine dragon sword and disappeared without a trace. So strong! The shock in Longqin's heart couldn't be concealed. The Eye of Heaven and 3,000 incarnations. This was simply an invincible combination. Since the last battle with the genius of the Divine Kingdom, she had been very confident in herself. Even if it was Qin Feiyang, the madman and the white-eyed wolf, she didn't put them in her eyes. But now, after witnessing the terrifying strength displayed by Qin Feiyang with her own eyes, she realized that there seemed to be a big gap between them. Moreover, the madman and the white-eyed wolf couldn't be underestimated. What kind of monsters were these three bastards reincarnated? They had been suppressing her since the ancient world. Now that they were in the Sky Cloud world, they were still suppressing her. This made her extremely irritated. Don't be impatient. Although they are strong, we aren't weak either. But, Longqin comforted his sister, but when he said this he suddenly stopped. But what? Longqin looked at him suspiciously. Nothing. Longqin shook his head. Are you keeping me in suspense again? Do you believe that I will tell mother that you bullied me? Longqin was extremely dissatisfied. Longqin was stunned and smiled bitterly. When did I bully you? Don't talk nonsense. In fact, I just want to say that whether it is us or Qin Feiyang, our strength is not weak, but it is still far from enough to face the Divine Kingdom. Is the Divine Kingdom that strong? Longqin expressed her doubts. Judging from the current few confrontations, the Sky Cloud world had the upper hand. Don't underestimate the Divine Kingdom. I have a hunch that Jiang Chun and the others may not be the strongest of the younger generation of the Divine Kingdom. In other words, there may be more terrifying young people in the Divine Kingdom. Moreover, you see that Jiang Chun and the others of the younger generation are so powerful, let alone the older generation of the Divine Kingdom. On the other hand, the number of people in the Sky Cloud world who have mastered the ultimate profound of the strongest law can be counted with 2 hands. This gap is not small at all. Longqin shook his head. So, Longqin was puzzled. So, no matter how outstanding we are individually, we can't turn the tide with our own strength. We must join forces. Qin Feiyang has 3,000 incarnations, the Eye of Heaven, and the Law of Life. The madman has the source of all evil and the blood eye. The white-eyed wolf has a heaven-defying battle soul. Plus my God's domain. As long as the 4 of us join forces, we can definitely block all the enemies who want to invade the Sky Cloud world. Longqin smiled confidently. After talking for so long, are you praising yourself? Longqin was stunned. What am I praising myself for? What I want to say is, now that we are facing the Divine Kingdom, we will not be obsessed with the past grudges, especially you and Mother. Before we deal with the Divine Kingdom, we must restrain the hatred in our hearts. You can understand it this way. Qin Feiyang and the others are now indispensable figures in the Sky Cloud world. If anything happens to them, the Sky Cloud world will inevitably be destroyed. Longqin looked at Longqin seriously and said in a deep voice, I'm not trying to scare you, but you must always remind yourself to put the overall situation first. The overall situation, Longqin murmured. You are very similar to Mother's character. But over the years, you have been by my side and you have changed. This point can be seen from the battle between you and the Divine Kingdom's Heaven's Pride. If it were you in the past, why would you care about the safety of the Sky Cloud world? You might even join forces with the Divine Kingdom to deal with Qin Feiyang and the others. So I hope you can continue to be like this. When you have time, you can enlighten Mother more. Longqin smiled. Sure enough, you are my brother. You know me so well. Sometimes, I really want to join forces with the Divine Kingdom to get rid of these bastards. Longqin snorted coldly. Longqin shook his head and smiled bitterly. He opened a space-time passage and left with Longqin. Black Tortoise World. Soul Sealing Valley. The situation here was needless to say. But who didn't change their expression on the spot when they came here? At this moment, Ryuko and the others were in the sky, looking at the soul-sealing valley below in panic. Their faces were as pale as paper, and their bodies were constantly trembling. Why did he bring them to such a place? What was he trying to do? Not to mention Ryuko and the others, even the broken dragon god sword was terrified to the extreme. And now there was a living example. That was Bing Running. According to the time in the Black Tortoise world, Bing Running had been suppressed here for at least hundreds of thousands of years. At first she could still struggle, but now she was numb and looked like a walking corpse. Qin Feiyang, let's talk. The blue-haired youth finally couldn't resist the fear in his heart, and turned to look at Qin Feiyang pleadingly. What else is there to talk about between us? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. We can talk. State your conditions. As long as you let me go, no matter what you want, I will agree to it. The blue-haired youth was terrified. He would rather die than be suppressed here. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and smiled. If I say that the Divine Kingdom will never harass the Sky Cloud world again, will you agree? Can you make this decision? The blue-haired youth stammered. Was there a need to say it? Of course he couldn't make this decision. I think it's not just you. I'm afraid that even the famous Ryuko can't make this decision. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Ryuko, say something quickly. The blue-haired youth hurriedly looked at Ryuko. At this moment, Ryuko's heart was also overwhelmed by fear. What nonsense are you talking about? Go down and soak in it. The madman sneered, and with a wave of his hand, an invisible pressure fell, and the group of people fell uncontrollably into the soul-sealing valley. No. I beg you. Not only the blue-haired youth, but Jiang Chun and the others also desperately shouted, their faces full of despair. The madman turned a deaf ear. No. Accompanied by a series of wails, the group of people fell into the soul-sealing valley one after another, and were instantly drowned by the stench. Damn it. Qin Feiyang, madman Emo, just you wait. We won't let you go. The pleading voice also turned into a roar. Their faces were full of resentment. The madman was about to suppress the divine dragon sword again. But Qin Feiyang suddenly reached out to stop him. Looking at the fragments of the divine dragon sword, he smiled and said, How do you feel? Just say what you want to say, don't beat around the bush. The divine dragon sword said in a deep voice. Smart. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Submit to me and work for me. Just you? The divine dragon sword was disdainful. Do you know how many powerhouses there are in the divine kingdom? Do you know how powerful the king is? You're just a junior, and you want me to submit to you? Can't you first weigh your own worth? Lin Fan thought. What qualifications do you have? The winner is the king, the loser is the bandit. Now that you are my captive, your life is in my hands, this is my qualification. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Then kill me if you have the ability. Let's see if the king of the divine kingdom will let you go? The divine dragon sword sneered. So confident? Qin Feiyang was taken aback, his eyes flashed slightly, and said with a smile, All right, let's make a bet. How? The divine dragon sword asked. Let's see if the king of the divine kingdom cares about you. I believe that the king will come to me personally soon. At that time, I will tell him that you have been destroyed by me. If he really cares about you, he will definitely avenge you. If he really avenges you, then I will let you go. But if he doesn't care about you, even if he hears the news of your death, he will remain indifferent. Then from now on, you will follow me. Qin Feiyang laughed. Chapter 3946. The divine dragon sword went silent. What's wrong? You don't dare to bet with me? Qin Feiyang smirked. Let's bet. The divine dragon sword said in a deep voice. But you have to keep your word. Don't worry. I, Qin Feiyang, am a man of my word. If the monarch really cares about you, I will let you go without saying a word. Qin Feiyang smiled. Okay. Then we'll wait and see. The divine dragon sword sneered. In fact, it also wanted to see if the monarch would care about it. Then do you want to let it soak in the water? Madman asked. Forget it, if it becomes one of us, wouldn't it be awkward? Qin Feiyang laughed. Hearing this, the divine dragon sword breathed a sigh of relief. As long as it didn't go to this damn place, everything was fine. Immediately, the two left with the fragments of the divine dragon sword. But Ryuko and the others were not so lucky. They struggled crazily in the soul-sealing valley, complaining endlessly. Shut up. Not far away. Bing Running looked at the group of people with an impatient face. She who had long been numb, no longer cared. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to us like this? The blue-haired youth said angrily. Look at you. Since you are so capable, why are you suppressed in the soul-sealing valley? Bing Running sneered. The blue-haired youth suddenly clenched his hands. Give up struggling. If you fall into the hands of Qin Feiyang and the others, you won't even have the right to choose death. You can only live a life worse than death here. Bing Running shook her head, looked at the group of people suspiciously and asked. But then again, who are you? Why haven't I seen you before in the Sky Cloud realm? Are you blind? You don't even know us, the heaven's pride of the divine kingdom? The blue-haired youth looked at her contemptuously. So you are from the divine kingdom? Bing Running suddenly realized. Since she was in the underworld King Hell, she had been suppressed here, so she knew nothing about what happened in the Sky Cloud realm. Who are you? Ryuko calmed down and asked Bing Running. I am the princess of the Ice Phoenix clan. Bing Running smiled proudly. The princess of the Ice Phoenix clan? Then you are also a member of the Phoenix clan, but why were you suppressed here by them? Jiang Chen was puzzled. It's all because he offended Qin Feiyang and the others. Bing Running sighed. Then how long have you been suppressed here? Jiang Chen asked. I didn't count it carefully, but it should be several 100,000 years. Bing Running shook her head. What? That long? Everyone looked at Bing Running in shock. No wonder he was so calm. He was already numb to it. According to the time outside, it shouldn't have been that long because the Black Tortoise realm has a time array. One day outside is 5,000 years here. By the way, I'll tell you a piece of bad news. The Black Tortoise realm is an independent world, so don't even think about escaping. As long as you're here, without Qin Feiyang's permission, it's useless even if you have heaven-defying abilities. Bing Running sneered. An independent world? How is this possible? The group was horrified. Ryuko clenched his fists and said in a deep voice, Father will definitely come to save me. That's right. Lord Divine King will definitely come to find us. Jiang Chen nodded. It seems like your background isn't small, but no matter how big your background is, it's useless. It's because you guys don't understand Qin Feiyang at all. He's a master who fears nothing. Back then, when they first came to the Sky Cloud realm, they dared to challenge sovereign realm experts with their imperishable realm cultivation. Bing Running sneered. She had already given up because it was impossible to escape. Ryuko frowned when he heard this. When did Qin Feiyang and the others enter the Sky Cloud realm? Bing Running pondered for a moment and said, according to the time outside, they should have entered the Sky Cloud realm for at most 1,000 years. This, Ryuko and the blue-haired youth were stunned. 1,000 years? Didn't this mean that Qin Feiyang wasn't an antique at all? Jiang Chen, Jiang Xing, what do you mean? The 10 people immediately looked at Jiang Chen and Jiang Xing sigh. The two sighed deeply and said, we lied before. In other words, he is really a junior of the Sky Cloud realm? Ryuko asked. Yes. The two nodded. Haha. Shame. As the most outstanding genius of the god race, you actually told such a big lie. Ryuko laughed like a madman. First, because of their previous behavior, they believed that Qin Feiyang was really an antique, so they kept humiliating him. But the result? The other party was a young man like him. At that time, in Qin Feiyang's eyes, he was probably just a desperate clown. Second, because a mere ant of the Sky Cloud realm was more outstanding than him. Ryuko of the Divine Kingdom. Not only was he defeated, but he was also suppressed in this place. His heart was extremely uncomfortable. At the same time, the Divine Dragon Sword was restricted in the Western Blood Sea, because the Devil's Land was Qin Feiyang's base camp. Before the Divine Dragon Sword surrendered, he would definitely not let it enter the devil's land. At this moment, Li Feng had also returned. How is it? Madman immediately asked. Li Feng shook his head in disappointment and said, the little rabbit said that Brother Wolf can't come out for the time being, but it also said that when Brother Wolf comes out, it will immediately let Brother Wolf come to us. What the hell is this wolf cub doing? Madman frowned. It's probably giving some good fortune to the white-eyed wolf, Qin Feiyang guessed. Good fortune? If it's really good fortune, why don't we have a share? Biased. Madman's face was full of displeasure. Come on, you have already obtained the inheritance of the Blood Demon King. Isn't that enough? Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. With a wave of his hand, the situation outside appeared in the void in front of him. The one who should be complaining was him. Madman had obtained the inheritance of his previous life, and the white-eyed wolf might have also obtained good fortune now. Only he had nothing. About a moment later, two figures descended in the core area. It was the old poison and fire dance. Looking at the chaotic core area, their faces changed drastically on the spot. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the two immediately appeared in front of him. Divine Dragon Sword? What's going on? Looking at the Divine Dragon Sword floating on the side, Fire Dance's pupil shrank, and she immediately looked at Qin Feiyang and Madman and asked, didn't they say that they couldn't use the sovereign divine weapon? But why was the Divine Dragon Sword here? Nothing big, just dealing with a few clowns. Madman laughed. The corner of Fire Dance's mouth twitched. No matter who came from the Divine Kingdom, it couldn't be a clown. How's the situation with the phone people? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. The old poison laughed and said, if it weren't for the sudden battle here, they would probably still be suffering in the periphery. Then did they give up? Li Feng was curious. Definitely. But fortunately they didn't retreat at the critical moment. The old poison said. Then does this count as passing the test? Qin Feiyang asked. Of course not. How can it be so easy? When they enter the land of the buried gods again, we'll give them more ruthless. Li Feng looked at the old poison and laughed. Now, I'm afraid they won't dare to enter the land of the buried gods again. The old poison shook his head. After such a terrifying battle, the Feng people were probably scared out of their wits. If they don't even have this bit of courage, then there's no point in helping them. Fire Dance snorted coldly. Qin Feiyang glanced at Fire Dance and said with a smile, then let's wait and see. Boom. As soon as he finished speaking, suddenly, a terrifying aura surged out from the Divine Kingdom's gate. This is Qin Feiyang's pupil shrank. This aura was very familiar. The Lord of the Divine Kingdom. Frenzy, Fire Dance, the old poison, and Li Feng immediately looked at the screen, their expressions extremely solemn. Soon, a middle-aged man wearing a purple gold robe walked out of the Divine Kingdom's gate and descended in the sky above the core area. This person was about 185 meters tall. His body was thin, his facial features were cold, and his eyes were deep. There were strands of white hair at his temples, revealing a vicissitude aura. My lord, Qin Feiyang murmured. What? He's the lord of the Divine Kingdom. Frenzy was shocked. Qin Feiyang nodded, looked at the Dragon God Sword, and said, do you remember our agreement? Yes. The Dragon God Sword replied. Then you stay here and watch carefully. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he took a step forward and instantly appeared in the sky above the core area. The Lord's eyes immediately locked onto Qin Feiyang. I didn't expect to alarm the Lord to personally come, and it's your real body. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and stepped forward. Last time, it was only the Lord's divine sense that appeared, but this time, it was his real body. Qin Xiaotian? The Lord raised his eyebrows. Whether it's Qin Xiaotian or Qin Feiyang, it's all me. Qin Feiyang smiled. No matter who you are, you have broken the agreement between us. The Lord's eyes flashed coldly. Is that really the case? Lord Monarch, if you truly believe that this junior is an antique, then this junior believes that the one who has descended upon the Sky Cloud realm right now is not you, Monarch. Furthermore, it is not only you but the Divine Nation's army. Qin Feiyang smiled. Quite smart. The Lord's cold eyes converged and he said faintly, Take me to verify your identity. No need. I will take you there. You can directly enter the 4 continents and ask around. Qin Feiyang said. I will ask around myself? As the host, aren't you going to accompany me? The Lord frowned, and there was a trace of displeasure on his face. Accompany you? Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked at the Lord strangely. What is this person thinking? Isn't it more convenient to investigate this kind of thing alone? Is it a bit difficult? The Lord asked. No. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. It is this junior's great honor to be able to accompany the Lord, but before I leave, this junior has something to tell you. After saying that, his mind moved, and Li Feng, Fire Dance, and the old poison appeared. Madman stayed in the Black Tortoise world and stared at the dragon god sword. Looking at the Lord, the 3 of them were full of fear. The Lord looked at the 3 of them with a trace of surprise in his eyes. He already knew Li Feng's strength, but he could faintly feel that Fire Dance and the old poison seemed to be somewhat extraordinary. Chapter 39:47. Qin Feiyang looked at Fire Dance and Li Chun and said with a smile, I won't bother about the Feng people. You guys can do as you see fit. All right. The 2 nodded. Qin Feiyang then turned to look at Li Feng and said with a smile, You come with me and accompany the Lord to the Eastern Continent because the people of the Eastern Continent know me the best. You don't need me to stay here? Li Feng was suspicious. No need. The whereabouts of the old ancestor have been confirmed. She is now in the Great Qin. Without the badge and long chens in my hands, she can't return to the Sky Cloud realm. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. All right. Li Feng nodded. With a wave of his hand, a space-time passage opened. He then retreated to the side and looked at the Lord. My Lord, please. You two, don't you want to hide your identities first? The Lord looked at the 2. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. Then he suddenly smiled and said, It's still Monarch who is considerate. After saying that, he took out 2 phantom pills. He took one himself and gave the other to Li Feng. Soon, the 2 of them turned into unfamiliar faces. Their cultivation base was also suppressed to the imperishable realm. The Lord naturally had a deeper meaning for them to change their appearances, because Qin Feiyang and Li Feng were now famous figures in the Sky Cloud realm. If they saw them in person, the people of the Sky Cloud realm might not tell the truth. Is it okay now? Qin Feiyang smiled. Let's go. The Lord turned and stepped into the passage. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng followed closely behind. They won't be in any danger, right? The old poison was worried. They shouldn't be. Looking at the Lord, he doesn't seem to be looking for trouble. Fire Dance whispered. But don't you think it's strange? Logically speaking, when he came to our Sky Cloud realm, shouldn't he immediately ask about the situation of the Dragon God Sword and Ryuko? But now he didn't mention a word. The old poison frowned, his face full of confusion. It's indeed a bit strange. Fire Dance nodded. The Lord's mind was a bit hard to guess. Eastern Continent. Ocean of Cloud City. On the streets, Qin Feiyang and Li Feng followed beside the monarch and strolled aimlessly. Furthermore, the monarch had also retracted his aura. He looked like a mortal. There was an endless stream of people on the streets. The sounds of discussion rose and fell. Just now, who was Qin Feiyang fighting in the land of buried gods? Could the entire Eastern Continent sense it? I just went to take a look at the exit. The battle seems to have ended. I even saw an old man at the exit. Old man. Yes. They seem to be Qin Feiyang's subordinates. He's sealing off the exit to prevent the battle from spreading to our Eastern Continent. Also, I heard from a friend that Princess Huofeng also appeared at the Northern Continent's exit. If they hadn't sealed off the exit and prevented the shockwaves of the battle from reaching the land of buried gods, the Eastern Continent and the Northern Continent would have faced annihilation. When Qin Feiyang heard these discussions, he couldn't help but reveal a smile on his face. Fire Dance and the old poison were really smart. They immediately ran to seal off the exit. Actually, it's obvious that Qin Feiyang and the others must be fighting the people of the Divine Kingdom in the core area. Moreover, the opponents this time are extraordinarily strong. Otherwise, Qin Feiyang wouldn't have personally taken action. That makes sense. This damned divine kingdom. I can't wait for them to all die. Why did they come to our sky cloud realm for no reason? We can't even have a day of peace here. Don't worry. We have Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, Goldwing Wolf King, and now, Long Chun and his sister have joined forces with Qin Feiyang and the others. With them here, not to mention the younger generation of the Divine Kingdom, even the older generation of the Divine Kingdom would be courting death if they dared to cause trouble in our sky cloud realm. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng had been paying attention to the monarch's expression. They thought that the monarch might be angry when he heard these voices insulting the Divine Kingdom. But unexpectedly, the monarch's expression was extremely calm. After a while, they passed by a small tavern. The monarch's footsteps paused. Then he turned and walked into the tavern. Qin Feiyang and Li Feng looked at each other and quickly followed in. A waiter came up and led the three to an empty table. He casually ordered a few dishes and a pot of wine. The tavern was also very lively, because the battle in the core area had just happened. This was the topic that was most discussed now. By the way, Qin Feiyang and the others are really amazing. In just these few years, they have grown to this point. Yeah. Who would have thought that today, after so many years, they would become the pillars of our sky cloud realm? In short, with them here, our sky cloud realm will definitely not lose to the Divine Kingdom. When everyone was talking, their faces were full of smiles. They could have such a comfortable life now, all because of Qin Feiyang and the others fighting on the front line. The monarch held a wine glass and tasted it while transmitting his voice. It seems that you have a good reputation in the sky cloud realm, but this wine is really not that good. What good wine can there be in such a small tavern? If the monarch really likes it, this junior will offer a few jars of divine wine for the monarch to taste. Qin Feiyang laughed secretly. The monarch glanced at him indifferently. Obviously, he didn't take it to heart. As the monarch of the Divine Kingdom, would he lack such things as divine wine? Definitely not. After listening silently for a while, the monarch turned his head to look at the two middle-aged men next to him and asked with a smile. Two brothers, are Qin Feiyang and the others from the sky cloud realm? Ha! As soon as this remark came out, everyone looked at the monarch with extremely strange eyes. What? The monarch was still a little uncomfortable. Are you from the sky cloud realm or not? You don't even know the situation of Qin Feiyang and the others. Could it be that you are a spy of the Divine Kingdom? Someone looked at the monarch warily. The monarch coughed dryly and said with an embarrassed smile, How could I be a spy of the Divine Kingdom? I am the monarch of the Divine Kingdom. Spy. This is a humiliation to me. Everyone, don't misunderstand. We are from the countryside. We have heard about Qin Feiyang and the others before, but we don't know much. Qin Feiyang quickly looked at everyone and said with a smile, Is that so? I knew it. Now, who in the sky cloud realm doesn't know about Qin Feiyang and the others? By the way, Qin Feiyang, Madman Mo, Golden Wing Wolf King, this old man is quite familiar with them. Because this old man has always lived in Cloud Sea City. Speaking of which, I have watched them grow up. An old man with white hair laughed in a hoarse voice. Is that so? The monarch looked at the old man curiously. Yes. The old man nodded, took a sip of wine, and said with a smile, Currently, almost everyone in the sky cloud realm knows about the origins of Qin Feiyang and the others. They are from the lower realms, but where exactly in the lower realms is unknown. Then when did they come to the sky cloud realm? The monarch asked. This old man doesn't know when they came to the sky cloud realm. But when they first appeared in Cloud Sea City, it seemed to be a few hundred years ago. I don't remember the exact time, but in any case, it was around 1,000 years ago. The old man said. Then what was their cultivation at that time? The monarch was puzzled. Their cultivation at that time. It's a little difficult to say. They were very weak at that time. They seemed to be in the undead realm. Any random person would be able to defeat them. However, although their cultivation was weak, their methods were terrifying. Because they had a sovereign divine weapon. And Qin Feiyang also mastered a divine ability called Slaughter Domain, which could compete with a sovereign divine weapon. Back then, they relied on Slaughter Domain and Sovereign Divine Weapon to rise step by step in the Eastern continent, and become the pillars of the sky cloud realm today. Of course. They didn't rely entirely on slaughter domain and sovereign divine weapon. The most important thing was their brains. They were very smart and courageous. The old man laughed hoarsely. His face was also full of admiration. Undead realm. The monarch murmured. In that case, Qin Feiyang was indeed not an old monster. Then Jiangchen was lying? The monarch's eyes flashed and he looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "Let's go to other places." "All right." Qin Feiyang nodded. True gold fears no fire. This was the truth. It didn't matter how you investigated. After settling the bill, the three of them left Cloudsea City. After half a day of investigation, the monarch even went to some remote villages to ask, but the answer was the same. In the evening, on a mountain peak, the monarch stood at the edge of the cliff with his hands behind his back, looking at the land that was gradually falling into the night. Under his calm expression, there were surging waves. He never expected that Qin Feiyang and the others would rise in such a short time. Compared to the monsters of the Divine Kingdom, they were many times more outstanding, because in terms of age, Qin Feiyang and the others were much younger than the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom. "Monarch, do you believe it now? If you still don't believe it, you might as well go to the other 3 continents to investigate." Li Feng pursed his lips with a hint of ridicule. Was there a need to doubt such a thing? Phew. The monarch took a deep breath and shook his head. "No, I believe everything I see with my own eyes." Li Feng said. "Then you won't suspect that we told them to say this in advance? You don't have to mock me like this." The monarch turned to look at Li Feng, a cold light flashing in his eyes, and said, "Don't try to provoke me, it won't do you any good." "This junior doesn't dare." Li Feng hurriedly bowed. The night gradually deepened. The land fell into darkness. The surroundings were silent. The monarch looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "I want to talk to you alone." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly, and he sent Li Feng to the Black Tortoise realm. "Let me see your life and death law," the monarch said. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the life and death law appeared, like a flame rising in the darkness. "It really is the life and death law," the monarch murmured, and his calm heart was stirred up again. This was really a talent. Even the direct descendants of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan couldn't compare to him at all. Qin Feiyang clenched his hand, and the life and death law dissipated, and said with a faint smile, "Monarch, if you have something to say, just say it." Chapter 3948. You're really impatient. The monarch smiled faintly and asked, "The ancestor you mentioned in the land of buried gods during the day should be my daughter, right?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "So my daughter wants to return to the Divine Kingdom now? If not, how could Qin Feiyang let people guard the core area?" "I don't deny it. But do you know why she wants to go back?" Qin Feiyang looked up at the night sky with a trace of sadness between his brows. He could understand the pain of the princess of the Divine Kingdom. On one side was the Sky Cloud realm, and on the other side was the Divine Kingdom. It was too uncomfortable for her to stand in the middle. If she could exchange her life for peace between the 2 sides, she would never hesitate. "I know." The monarch nodded and sighed. As a father, how could he not understand his daughter? "Since you know, why did you still invade the Sky Cloud realm? Even if you don't think for yourself, you should think for your daughter." Back then, Dragon King and the other 2 sneak attacked the Human Emperor, Feather Emperor, and Shuezu, and sealed the ancestor. In fact, the root of the problem is your fault. Qin Feiyang was indignant. "Our fault?" The monarch frowned. "Yes, your fault. If you didn't invade the Sky Cloud realm and plunge it into misery and suffering, would the Dragon King and the others hate the Purple Gold Divine Dragon so much? Because of their hatred, when they saw the love between the Human Emperor and the ancestor, they were resentful. Although they did this because of their selfishness, compared to their selfishness, the harm that the Divine Kingdom brought to the Sky Cloud realm is the root cause. In short, your daughter's suffering all these years was caused by you. Similarly, she is atoning for the atrocities that you all have committed. May I ask, do you really understand the ancestors' painstaking efforts? No, you don't understand. So, whether the ancestor has made up her mind or not, I will not let her return to the Divine Kingdom." Qin Feiyang's eyes were firm. If he really let the princess of the Divine Kingdom return to the Divine Kingdom, she would only suffer more grievances. The monarch was silent for a moment and asked, "You care about her?" "Of course. She is my family. Her bloodline power flows in my body," Qin Lai said. "I'm not afraid that the Divine Kingdom is very strong, but if you dare hurt her, I will make you regret it, including you." Qin Feiyang stared at the monarch with a cold glint in his eyes. "Including me?" The monarch smiled. The monarch. He hadn't heard such a threat. His courage. "I'm not joking. Please don't take it as a joke." Qin Feiyang looked at the monarch very seriously. The king smiled faintly. It was unknown whether or not he took these words to heart. He asked, "Then, where is the great Qin that you speak of?" When Qin Feiyang heard this, a trace of vigilance immediately appeared in his eyes. "Don't dare to let me know? Are you afraid that I will attack the great Qin?" The monarch looked at Qin Feiyang mockingly. Qin Feiyang clenched his fists and said word by word, "If you dare to attack the great Qin, I will slaughter the entire Divine Kingdom. Not even a blade of grass will survive in the Divine Kingdom." "Heard it?" The monarch narrowed his eyes. There was a dangerous signal in his eyes. However, Qin Feiyang wasn't afraid at all. He looked back at the monarch. The great Qin was his home and his reverse scale. Anyone who dared to attack the great Qin was crossing his bottom line. This was unforgivable. "Haha." The monarch laughed. Whether it was talent or courage, this boy was the best. The great Qin. Qin clan. If I'm not wrong, the great Qin should be the country where the Qin clan is resting and passing down its legacy. In other words, the Qin clan living in the great Qin is the descendant of my daughter and the human emperor. The monarch guessed. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. "I didn't expect my daughter to have so many descendants here. I'm curious. Which generation of the Qin clan do you belong to? Is the descendant of my daughter and the human emperor, my grandson, still alive?" The monarch looked at Qin Feiyang curiously. "I can't tell you." Qin Feiyang shook his head. The monarch frowned. He held back his patience and said, "Then let me ask you this. How many members of the Qin clan have the power of the purple gold divine dragon bloodline?" "I can't tell you either." Qin Feiyang shook his head again. The monarch's eyes showed a trace of anger. "Little guy, you are testing my patience. If you are here to acknowledge your family, I will definitely tell you. But you are here to invade. Moreover, the old ancestor said that you have always been against the fact that his clan members have the purple gold dragon bloodline. Therefore, I am here to protect my clan members." Qin Feiyang said indifferently. If he really told this person about the Great Qin situation, this person might try to find a way to go to the Great Qin. Although it seemed that the Divine Kingdom couldn't enter the lower worlds at present, it was better to be safe than sorry. Therefore, he couldn't take the risk. "It seems that it will be a little difficult to talk calmly for a while. Fine. I will not beat around the bush. 2 choices. First, you come with me to the Divine Kingdom and become a member of the Divine Kingdom. I will do my best to nurture you. The resources of the Divine Kingdom are not something the Sky Cloud realm can compare to. Moreover, you have the power of the purple gold divine dragon bloodline, so you can be considered my descendant. It is reasonable for you to come with me to the Divine Kingdom." The monarch said. "Reasonable?" Qin Feiyang couldn't help but laugh. This was all nonsense. In fact, the monarch was only interested in his life and death law and his talent. The second choice. Forcefully strip away your life and death law, 3,000 incarnations, and eye of heaven and give them to the Divine Kingdom. As a condition, I will not send a single soldier into the Sky Cloud realm for 10,000 years. The monarch continued. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Forcefully strip away the life and death law, 3,000 incarnations, and eye of heaven and give them to the Divine Kingdom in exchange for 10,000 years of peace? The life and death law, eye of heaven, and 3,000 incarnations were so cheap? You can consider it. Of course, what I hope most is that you can come with me to the Divine Kingdom. The Divine Kingdom is also part of the human race and is quite powerful. When the time comes, I can let you ascend to the throne of the human race. The monarch smiled confidently. In his opinion, This was a tempting condition that couldn't be refused. However, he didn't know that Qin Feiyang never cared about this. The human race is supreme, the human race is leader. In his opinion, these were just empty titles. Moreover, if he really went to the Divine Kingdom, he would have to help the Divine Kingdom bully the creatures of the Sky Cloud realm. How could he agree to such a thing? Whether it was people like the Feather Emperor, or the billions of creatures of the Sky Cloud realm, everyone trusted him so much. How could he betray everyone's trust? He couldn't. Although he, Qin Feiyang, was not a kind-hearted person, he still knew what comradeship was. This kind of thing doesn't need to be considered. I won't go to the Divine Kingdom. 3,000 incarnations, eye of heaven, and the life and death law, I won't give them to anyone. It's still the previous agreement. As long as the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm can defeat the younger generation of the Divine Kingdom within 1,000 years, then you can retreat. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Why? The creatures of the Sky Cloud realm are not related to you. Why do you want to protect them with your life? The monarch frowned. There was a trace of anger in his words. It was as if he was saying that Qin Feiyang was stupid and stubborn. There are some things that you won't understand. Moreover, I am the descendant of the human sovereign. Naturally, I will follow his will and protect this land. Qin Feiyang smiled. Are you so confident that you can defeat the younger generation of the Divine Kingdom? The monarch raised his eyebrows. Then let's give it a try. Of course. If you can promise never to invade the Sky Cloud realm, and never harm the creatures of the Sky Cloud realm, I can go with you to the Divine Kingdom. The old ancestor is willing to use her fate in exchange for the peace of the Sky Cloud realm. I am also willing. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. You are indeed extremely stupid. The monarch shook his head. Stupid people have stupid luck. Qin Feiyang smiled. Then it seems that this trip was in vain. The monarch shook his head regretfully. Not really. After all, the Dragon God Sword and Ryuko are in my hands. You don't plan to save them? Qin Feiyang asked curiously. The monarch said indifferently, aside from the Dragon God Sword, you can kill the others if you want. You still care about the Dragon God Sword. However, I am a little embarrassed. The Dragon God Sword has been destroyed by me. Qin Feiyang smiled. What? The monarch's face suddenly sank, and a terrifying aura spread out. It has provoked me again and again. How can I tolerate its continued existence in this world? Qin Feiyang sneered. You are digging your own grave. The monarch's eyes turned cold. Behind him, 3,000 identical monarchs appeared. 3,000 clones. Following that, one after another, the power of law emerged. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. They were all ultimate laws. Could it be that this person has mastered the ultimate meaning of the 6 ultimate laws? If that was the case, then it was too terrifying. Think about it. 3,000 clones, activating the ultimate meaning of the 6 ultimate laws. That is a total of 18,000 ultimate meanings of the ultimate laws. How shocking is that? Although he has the eye of heaven, once a battle breaks out with the monarch, it means tearing up the agreement. When the older generation of the Divine Kingdom arrives in the Sky Cloud realm, what kind of scene would that be? Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, Don't forget our agreement. You have touched my bottom line. The monarch's eyes flashed with killing intent. I will now announce that the agreement is... Wait. Qin Feiyang quickly reached out to interrupt. Because this old thing was obviously going to say that the agreement was void. This agreement cannot be voided. At least until he comprehended the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death. At that time, he would have the capital to compete with the Divine Kingdom. Scared? The monarch smiled coldly. I really didn't expect you to be a person who values friendship. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. He had lost the bet. He thought that a powerhouse like the monarch would definitely not care about a sovereign weapon, but the result was greatly unexpected. With a wave of his hand, the broken Dragon God Sword appeared. The monarch was stunned. Wasn't it destroyed? Chapter 3949. In fact, this is a bet between me and the Divine Dragon Sword. If you care about it, I will let it go. If you don't, it will follow me in the future. Qin Feiyang's face was full of helplessness. He had underestimated the monarch. From this, it could be seen that there should be a story between the monarch and the divine dragon sword. Otherwise he wouldn't care so much. So that's how it is. The monarch muttered, looking at Qin Feiyang with a hint of ridicule. He was naive enough to test his relationship with the divine dragon sword. Did he think that only you, Qin Feiyang, had a few loyal companions? At least you keep your word. The divine dragon sword snorted. Although I, Qin Feiyang, am not a good person, I am still a person who is willing to accept defeat. As for Ryuko and the others, Qin Feiyang glanced at the divine dragon sword, then looked at the monarch and said, "Don't say that too early. Although Ryuko and the others have left their souls in the divine kingdom, and are not afraid of death, in my hands, it will be difficult for them to die even if they want to. Moreover, you should have heard of the methods of the golden-winged wolf king." Deprive cultivation? The monarch frowned. That's not all. The golden-winged wolf king still has many terrifying methods, but he hasn't shown them yet. But I think that just the method of stripping away their cultivation is enough to destroy Longzi and the others. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Are you threatening me? The monarch looked at Qin Feiyang unkindly. This little guy was getting more and more presumptuous. Then you can take it as a threat. I think you don't want to save a few cripples. The meaning of his words was very obvious. You'd better satisfy my conditions. Otherwise, let the white-eyed wolf deprive Ryuko and the others of their cultivation. The monarch took a deep breath and said, "Tell me your conditions." Straightforward. First, return the other half of the emperor's sword to us. Second, the agreement of 1,000 years will be extended to 10,000 years. Third, from now on, when the geniuses of the divine kingdom enter the sky cloud realm, they can challenge us fairly, but they are not allowed to kill the innocent. Fourthly, if one day our ancestor returns to the divine kingdom while we're not paying attention, you have to promise me that you won't make things difficult for her. Even though it's practically impossible for such a thing to happen, it's still best to take precautions, Qin Feiyang said. When the monarch heard this, he looked at Qin Feiyang expressionlessly. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "I think these 4 conditions shouldn't be difficult for you, right?" "All right." The monarch nodded. "Words are no proof. Swear an oath as proof." Qin Feiyang smiled. What if in the future, this person was in a bad mood and announced that the agreement was invalid? Wouldn't all their efforts be in vain? Therefore, he had to seize the opportunity and seize the initiative. Swear an oath. Simply childish and laughable. The king snorted coldly. This is no ordinary oath. Blood oath. Blood oaths will come true. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. You also know about the blood oath? The king's face suddenly showed a trace of surprise. What? You also know about the blood oath? Qin Feiyang also looked surprised. I once fought on a continent and saw the blood oath. The king said vaguely, then looked at Qin Feiyang meaningfully and said, You even know about the blood oath. It seems that you have a lot of capable people around you. You flatter me. Qin Feiyang smiled. But in his heart he was pondering. Snow and Bloodblade had said that the blood oath was a kind of oath many years ago, and almost no one knew about it now. But now the king said that there was a blood oath in a continent that he once fought on. What kind of continent was this? How many continents were there in this world? Fine. I'll make a blood oath. But you have to let her go immediately. In the end, the king compromised. Without Qin Feiyang's advice, he directly made a blood oath. This proved that he did know about the blood oath. And he was also afraid that the white-eyed wolf would really deprive Ryuko and the others of their cultivation. When the time came, these talents of the divine kingdom would all become useless. It would be a huge loss for the divine kingdom. And it would take a lot of resources and effort to cultivate them again. No. I have to see the human sovereign sword before I let them go. Qin Feiyang shook his head. With the blood oath, what are you worried about? The king frowned. I'm not worried. But I have to see the human sovereign sword before I let them go. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. In fact, his purpose was very simple. It was to let Ryuko and the others enjoy more in the soul-sealing valley. King, you have to let them go now. The dragon god sword thought for a while and knew Qin Feiyang's intention. What? The king was suspicious. You don't know how embarrassing their situation is now. The dragon god sword briefly explained the situation in the soul-sealing valley. What? The king was furious when he heard this. He stared at Qin Feiyang and said, "You've gone too far. Isn't this what they asked for? Especially the people of the God clan. They actually wanted to massacre the city. If it weren't for the fact that they all left their souls in the divine kingdom, killing them would be meaningless. Otherwise, what you see now would be their corpses. If you want them to suffer less, hurry up and send the human sovereign sword." Qin Feiyang sneered. "Okay. As expected of the descendant of the purple gold divine dragon clan, you're ruthless. Just you wait. When I go back, I'll immediately send someone to send the human sovereign sword to you." After saying this, the king waved his hand, put away the dragon god sword, turned around, and stepped into the air without looking back. Looking at the king disappearing into the night sky, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Although he had been taking the initiative to negotiate with the king with ease, in fact, he was under a lot of pressure in his heart. After all, he was the king of the divine kingdom. Even the god clan and the human clan of the divine kingdom had to submit to him. However, this negotiation had a huge harvest. The agreement of 1,000 years had been extended to 10,000 years. They would undoubtedly have more time to grow. The most important thing was to get the human sovereign sword back. The human sovereign sword, whether it was for him, the Feather Emperor, or the human clan of the Sky Cloud realm, was of great significance, because the human sovereign sword represented the human sovereign. This was a symbol of status, a spiritual pillar. As long as the human sovereign sword returned, the morale of the Sky Cloud realm would skyrocket again. Of course, the third condition was equally important. Because in the future, no matter how the heavens pride of the divine kingdom caused trouble in the Sky Cloud realm, they would not face the crisis of massacring the city. It could be said that this time he had won a great victory. Swish! Just as Qin Feiyang was about to enter the Black Tortoise realm, two figures suddenly appeared in the sky. Qin Feiyang immediately looked up, a cold light surging in his eyes, because these two figures were Ice Dragon and Small Beast that had disappeared for a long time. "What are you doing here?" Qin Feiyang's eyes suddenly sank. Ice Dragon and Small Beast landed on the top of the mountain and laughed. "Not bad. You can still be so calm in the face of the king of the divine kingdom. Don't tell me you are also afraid of the king of the divine kingdom." Qin Feiyang sneered. "A mere king of the divine kingdom. How can we put him in our eyes? However, the person behind the divine kingdom is not a simple character." Ice Dragon said. "What? There is someone behind the divine kingdom?" Qin Feiyang was surprised. Frenzy and Li Feng were also shocked when they heard this in the Black Tortoise realm. "This world is not as simple as you think. How about this, let's make a deal." Small Beast said. "What kind of deal?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "Destroy the divine kingdom, and we will return Chang Shui to you and help you remove the seal of the two war souls," Ice Dragon said. "Really?" Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. "Listen carefully, destroy the divine kingdom." Small Beast looked at him mockingly. "Destroy?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. "Yes. The divine kingdom is the same as the Black Tortoise realm, an independent world. What you need to do is to destroy this world, not just defeat the divine kingdom. If you agree now, I can also tell you a piece of good news." The little beast smiled playfully. "What news?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "It's about the inner demons and the whereabouts of your cousin," Ice Dragon said. "The inner demons? Big cousin?" Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled, and he asked in surprise, "Aren't they dead?" Ice Dragon said. "Since we mention them now, it naturally proves that they are not dead." "Not dead?" Qin Feiyang was like a bolt from the blue, and his mind was rumbling. "The inner demons and big cousin are not dead? Where are they? Tell me." Qin Feiyang roared. Small Beast said mockingly, "You haven't agreed to our deal yet." "I agree. I promise, I will destroy the divine kingdom." Qin Feiyang nodded. "You have guts. Don't worry, you might see them soon." As soon as the voice fell, Small Beast and Ice Dragon disappeared without a trace. "Bastard! You tricked me." Qin Feiyang was stunned. and then he was furious. But was it true? Or were they tricking him? The inner demon's big cousin, as everyone knew, Qin Feiyang, was a very calm person, but at this moment, his mind was in chaos. Chapter 3950. Damn, the Divine Kingdom is actually an independent world. This news is too shocking. Black Tortoise World. Western region, above the Blood Sea. Li Feng's face was full of shock. That's not the point, okay? The point is that there is another person behind the master of the Divine Kingdom. This person, if I'm not wrong, must be the same as Old Qin, the true ruler of the Divine Kingdom, controlling the land of origin. Madman said solemnly. Li Feng looked at Madman and frowned. Even the people of the Divine Kingdom are so strong. Then wouldn't this ruler be even more terrifying? Nonsense. I'm sure that this person is definitely in existence on the same level as Small Beast. What a strong opponent. Madman muttered. Just thinking about it made his scalp tingle. Li Feng swallowed his saliva and looked at Qin Feiyang in the image. He said worriedly, "Will Qin Dage be okay?" "Don't worry. His ability to resist pressure is very strong. The news of the inner demons can only affect him for a while." Madman waved his hand, not caring at all. As expected. Not long after, Qin Feiyang calmed down. Whether it was true or not, as long as there was a trace of possibility, he would not give up. Swish. With a wave of his hand, Li Feng and Madman appeared. "Qin Dage, are you okay?" Li Feng asked with concern. "I'm fine." Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said with a smile, "Let's go to the dragon's nest." "Why are we going to the dragon's nest?" Li Feng and Madman were stunned. "To verify something." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. "All right." Li Feng nodded and opened a space-time tunnel. The three of them walked in and arrived above the dragon's nest. This was the former phoenix's nest. Now there was also a barrier here. It was still set up by the heavenly god sword. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the power of law swooped down and blasted towards the barrier. Long Chen and his sister sensed the commotion and immediately came out. When they saw Qin Feiyang and the other two in the sky, Long Qin frowned. What are these two bastards doing here? She directly ignored Li Feng. Even though Li Feng and the Dragon clan were irreconcilable, in Long Qin's heart, she did not have any hatred towards Li Feng. The only person she hated was Qin Feiyang, the madman, the white-eyed wolf. "Brother Qin, Brother Mo, Brother Li Feng. Why did you guys team up and come to my dragon's lair?" Long Chen stepped out of the enchantment and stood in front of the three of them. "If I say that I'm here to cause trouble for you, would you believe me?" Madman chuckled. "I don't." Long Chen shook his head, pondered for a moment, and said with a smile, "If I'm not mistaken, you must have come for the princess of the Divine Kingdom. Nothing really escapes your eyes." "That's right. I'm here for her. I want to know, did the ancestor want to stay in the Great Qin, or did you do it on purpose?" Qin Feiyang asked. "What do you think?" Long Chen asked back. "I don't know." Qin Feiyang shook his head. He didn't want to guess. Because he couldn't figure out Long Chen, otherwise he wouldn't have come personally. "All right. Then I'll tell you the truth. I deliberately left her in the Great Qin." Long Chen sighed. "On purpose?" Madman and Li Feng looked at each other and looked at Long Chen suspiciously. "That's right. Her plan was to go to the Great Qin to visit the descendants of the Qin clan, and then immediately return to the Divine Kingdom. She wanted to use her own fate to exchange for the peace of the Sky Cloud realm. But at that time, I thought that even if she went back, she wouldn't be able to change the decision of the ruler of the Divine Kingdom. Instead, it would give the Divine Kingdom a bargaining chip against us. After all, for you, Qin Feiyang, the Divine Kingdom's princess is very important. If she was in danger in the Divine Kingdom, you would definitely risk your life to rescue her. So in order to prevent this from happening, after I sent her to the Great Qin, I took the initiative to leave her there and return to the Sky Cloud realm alone. Now that the passage between the Sky Cloud realm and the Underworld King's hell has collapsed, as long as we don't pick her up, she won't even be able to enter the Sky Cloud realm, let alone return to the Divine Kingdom. Of course, after going to the Great Qin, I also learned about your childhood." Long Chen chuckled. Qin Feiyang looked deeply at Long Chen and cupped his hands. Thank you. No need. I just hope that she won't blame me in the future. Long Chen waved his hand. Li Feng asked, so now we don't have to worry about the old ancestor? Yes. Let her live out her remaining years in the great Qin Empire. Qin Feiyang nodded, then looked at Long Chen and said, your father came to find me. Long Chen was stunned and hurriedly asked, when? Just now. And that small beast. A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. Every time these two bastards were mentioned, the murderous intent in his heart couldn't be controlled. He went to find you, but he didn't even come to see us? Does he still have us in his heart? Long Chen's eyebrows were filled with resentment. Long Qin also flew up angrily and asked, where is he now? Gone. Qin Feiyang felt some sympathy for this pair of siblings. Although their father was still alive, it was as if he didn't exist. However, from the current situation, the marriage between Ice Dragon and Long Zun might have been an accident. In other words, Ice Dragon didn't have any feelings for Long Zun. As for Long Zun, he just fancied Ice Dragon's strength and wanted Ice Dragon to protect dragons. But what Long Zun didn't expect was that although Ice Dragon was powerful, there were many restrictions and restrictions. Of course, no matter what, Long Zun gave birth to a son and a daughter for Ice Dragon. The key was that this Long Chen was so outstanding. No matter how much he didn't have feelings for her, for the sake of this pair of children, Ice Dragon wouldn't sit idly by. Otherwise, Ice Dragon wouldn't have saved her at the critical moment in the ancient world. Long Chen sighed and asked, why did they look for you? They made a deal. They asked me to destroy the Divine Kingdom. And they also said that the Divine Kingdom is actually the same as the Black Tortoise Realm, an independent world. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. An independent world. Long Chen murmured and smiled bitterly. In that case, there is someone behind the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. Smart. Qin Feiyang smiled. It's really a difficult task. Long Chen shook his head. There's another piece of good news. The Lord of the Divine Kingdom also came to find me. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the negotiation with the Lord of the Divine Kingdom. This is indeed good news. 10,000 years is enough for us to grow up. Long Chen nodded. So confident? Madman looked at him in astonishment. Even if I can't grow up, as long as Brother Qin comprehends the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, won't you be able to compete with the Divine Kingdom? Long Chen chuckled. Knowing that I have mastered the law of life and death, it seems that you were also watching the battle in the land of buried gods. Qin Feiyang frowned. Such an exciting battle. How could I miss it? Long Chen smiled and waved his hand, opening a crack in the barrier, saying, it's rare for us to meet. Why don't we stay here for a few more days and let Ryuko and the others enjoy that wonderful life a little longer? Madman looked at Long Chen in astonishment and smiled mischievously. You're also a bad guy. Haha. Long Chen laughed, and the group entered the dragon's nest, leisurely drinking tea and chatting. Land of buried gods. Less than half an hour later, a figure walked out from the gate of the Divine Kingdom. This person was the red-haired old man who fought with Li Feng and Yun Xiang before. No one. Looking at the empty core area, the red-haired old man raised his eyebrows and spread his inner sight in all directions. But within the range of his inner sight, there wasn't even a shadow. What do you mean? The red-haired old man frowned. Waiting until dawn, he still didn't see Qin Feiyang, so he left the land of buried gods and asked around. But now no one knew the whereabouts of Qin Feiyang. Deliberately hiding? This made him extremely angry and anxious. Because every day delayed, Ryuko and the others would have to suffer 5,000 years of torture. The current situation was obvious. Qin Feiyang deliberately hid. In the blink of an eye. Half a month passed. The red-haired old man asked around. But in the face of the unfamiliar sky cloud realm, even if his strength was heaven-defying, he still felt powerless. The divine dragon sword had already explained that the Black Tortoise realm had 5,000 years of time. Half a month passed, and the Black Tortoise realm had 75,000 years. In other words, Ryuko and the others had already suffered for more than 70,000 years in the Black Tortoise realm. And they had probably collapsed. After all, they were a group of proud sons of heaven, How could they withstand such humiliation? Qin Feiyang, if you don't come out, then don't blame this old man for being ruthless. This made the red-haired old man go crazy with anger. If it weren't for the Lord of the Divine Kingdom repeatedly telling him not to kill the innocent, he would have already started a massacre. In the blink of an eye, another half a month passed. Counting from start to finish, it had been a whole month. 1 month in the outside world was 150,000 years in the Black Tortoise realm. On this day, Qin Feiyang and the others finally left the dragon lair under Long Chen's gaze, came to the core area, and released the news. After receiving the news, the red-haired old man immediately came to the core area. It's you. I didn't expect you to come in person. I'm really sorry this month. We have been in seclusion and didn't receive any news of your arrival. Please forgive us. Qin Feiyang and the others hurriedly cupped their hands and apologized. The corners of the red-haired old man's mouth twitched. Wasn't it too obvious? He raised his eyebrows and said, "Stop talking nonsense, hurry up and release them." "Where's the Emperor's sword?" Qin Feiyang asked. The red-haired old man waved his hand, and a broken sword immediately appeared. It was purple-gold in color, and its divine light was dim, but it exuded an astonishing sharpness. When this broken sword appeared, the other broken sword in his body immediately exuded a strong wave of emotion. It was a wave of joy. "Let me verify it first." Qin Feiyang looked at the red-haired old man and said, and then took out the broken sword. When the broken sword appeared, the broken sword floating in front of the red-haired old man immediately broke through the air. And with a clang, the two broken swords instantly merged together. There was no gap at the joint, and it was quite perfect. At the moment of fusion, the divine power of a sovereign divine weapon rolled out. And the dim sword body also emitted a dazzling divine light, and it also exuded the power of an emperor. "It's right," the red-haired old man said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang looked at the emperor's sword, and the joy on his face could not be concealed. It was finally complete. He had finally lived up to the emperor's spirit in heaven. Chapter 3952. Suppressing the joy in his heart, Qin Feiyang sent the human sovereign sword back to the Black Tortoise realm to be repaired, because the broken part still needed time to be repaired. Then, Qin Feiyang looked at Frenzy and Li Feng. The two understood and pinched their noses at the same time. Seeing this, the red-haired old man thought to himself, "Is it that exaggerated?" Although the Lord of the Divine Kingdom had told him what happened to Ryuko and the others, he didn't see it with his own eyes. But just in case, he held his breath quietly. Swish! As Qin Feiyang waved his hand, more than a dozen figures appeared in the void in front of him. It was Ryuko and the others. Qin Feiyang and the other two decisively took a few steps back, their faces full of disgust. Because with the appearance of this group of people, a pungent stench swept over, as if more than a dozen huge cesspools were placed in front of them. They could smell the stench even by pinching their noses. When the red-haired old man saw the appearance of more than a dozen people with his own eyes, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch. For a whole month, 5,000 years in a day, that was 150,000 years. Soaking in that place for 150,000 years, one could imagine that the stench had seeped into their bones. It was impossible to get rid of this stench in a short time. Even if they got rid of it in the future, it would definitely leave an impression in their hearts for a lifetime. This was murderous. The method could be said to be extremely vicious. Old Wu, kill him. When they saw the red-haired old man, Ryuko and the others were immediately overjoyed. At the same time, the anger in their hearts burst out uncontrollably. For them, 150,000 years in the Black Tortoise realm. Every day was like a year, which was worse than death. The red-haired old man's heart was burning with anger. A group of geniuses of the Divine Kingdom actually suffered such humiliation? However, he didn't dare to really do it. Taking a deep breath, he calmed down the anger in his heart. But this deep breath made him nauseous on the spot. It was too smelly and disgusting. Boom! A terrifying aura burst out. Yes, 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 kill them! Jiangchen roared. They thought that the red-haired old man was going to attack Qin Feiyang, and the other two. Their faces were full of hatred. Qin Feiyang and the other two also thought so. But in the end, the red-haired old man's target was Ryuko and the others. As the terrifying aura roared, the group of people were smashed into pieces on the spot. Not even their bones remained. Ugh! Qin Feiyang was stunned. Madman and Li Feng were also dumbfounded. What was going on? You guys are ruthless. Kill the heart before killing. Even if they escape this calamity, they will become the laughingstock of the world. But let this old man tell you, you have to pay the price for your wrongdoings. Take care of yourselves. The red-haired old man looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two and snorted coldly. Without looking back, he rushed into the gate of the Divine Kingdom and disappeared without a trace. You have to pay the price for your mistakes, Qin Feiyang murmured. He looked at the gate of the Divine Kingdom and said with a smile, I agree. This was also something he often said. This little old man is ruthless enough. Madman came back to his senses and revealed a trace of fear in his eyes. I admire him. If Ryuko and the others return to the Divine Kingdom like this, it will definitely cause a big commotion. Moreover, we have to find a way to remove the stench in their bodies. How troublesome is that? So it's better to kill them directly. Anyway, they have left their souls in the Divine Kingdom. It doesn't matter if they die. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and then sighed regretfully. It's a pity that the white-eyed wolf hasn't come out yet. Otherwise, we can deprive them of their laws. Even if we let them go, they won't pose any danger to us. By the way, what is Brother Wolf doing on Sky Cloud Island? Madman frowned. Even if there was some good fortune, there was no need to delay it for so long. If the white-eyed wolf didn't come out, they wouldn't be able to carry out their plan to enter the Divine Kingdom. Actually, the reason why they delayed it for so long was to wait for the white-eyed wolf to come out. But a whole month had passed and there was no news. Buzz. At this time, with the appearance of a space-time tunnel, Fire Dance and Old Poison walked out one after another. Fire Dance's face was very calm, but the Old Poison looked very excited. What's the matter that made you so happy? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Haha. You didn't see how miserable the old antiques of the foam people have been this month. The Old Poison laughed heartily. Yes. It's been a month. How are they now? Qin Feiyang asked. He almost forgot about the existence of the foam people. You will see it with your own eyes later. Old Poison laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang, Madman, and Li Feng looked at each other and couldn't help but reveal a look of anticipation. About half an hour passed. Finally, more than a dozen figures entered their line of sight. These people were the reclusive old antiques of the foam people. But at this time, everyone was in an extremely sorry state. Not only were they dispirited, but they were also covered in wounds. Almost all of their bodies were rotten, and they were like a group of walking corpses. They supported each other, limping and swaying. It was very difficult for them to even walk. Their eyes were also filled with despair. It was hard to imagine how they got here. Old Poison, you are too ruthless. Look at them, they are about to lose hope in life. The corners of Madman's mouth twitched. Not fast. They have already lost hope in life. Old Poison smiled smugly. Is this the core area? Look. There are people in front. A group of people slowly entered the core area and looked around vigilantly. When they saw Qin Feiyang and the others in front, their eyes suddenly lit up. It's Qin Feiyang. And Fire Dance. Hurry. Let's go over. The white-haired old man shouted. I can't hold on. As soon as one of the old antiques finished speaking, he collapsed to the ground weakly. I can't. Just a little bit more. Grit your teeth and hold on. The white-haired old woman roared with all her might. However, even if she used all her strength, her voice was not loud, and it was filled with weakness. I can't hold on either. However, before he finished speaking, another two old antiques collapsed to the ground. Wu Huadahong slowly raised his arm and looked at Fire Dance weakly. His bloody face was filled with helplessness and looked extremely pitiful. However, Fire Dance only looked at this scene indifferently and did not have any reaction. Huadahong also collapsed powerlessly. He had reached his limit. I can't walk either. The other old antiques also collapsed to the ground one after another. Looking at the dark sky, they thought of the foam people's current situation and the torture and grievances they had suffered in the past month. They could not help but feel sour in their hearts as tears flowed down their faces. Let's go and take a look, Qin Feiyang said and led them to a group of people. Brother Qin. Brother Madman. Or. The white-haired old woman and the white-haired old man looked at the group of people and felt as if a lifetime had passed. Although it had only been a month, it felt as long as dozens of centuries. Tears could not help but fall from the corners of their eyes. Now you can understand how Fire Dance felt when she was wronged? Qin Feiyang said faintly. Yes. The two old men nodded with an apologetic expression. Wu, Grandpa is sorry. Grandpa is wrong. I'm sorry. Hua Dahong collapsed to the ground and looked at Fire Dance standing at the side with a face full of self-blame. When Fire Dance heard this, she turned her head and looked elsewhere. Her eyes were somewhat moist. It was not because she was sad to see these people like this, but because these people finally knew how much she had suffered. Wu, we no longer dare to hope that you can forgive us. We only hope that you can look for the sake of your clansmen and find a place for us Feng people in the Sky Cloud realm. As long as you agree, I am willing to apologize with my life, the white-haired old woman said in a hoarse voice. Her weak voice was incomparably firm. Are you really willing to apologize with your life? Madman laughed cruelly. Yes. The white-haired old woman nodded. Good. You can end your own life now. If you really dare, then I promise that I will immediately find a place for you Feng people to recuperate. Madman sneered. It's a deal. The white-haired old woman clenched her teeth and a destructive aura surged from her body. She was going to self-destruct. You really aren't afraid of death? Madman was stunned. He shattered the old woman's sea of qi and forcibly stopped the self-destruction. The white-haired old woman spat out a mouthful of blood and looked suspiciously at Madman. Now you are quite brave. Then when Fire Dance was bullied by Feng Ho, why didn't you stand up for her? Madman sneered. The white-haired old woman smiled bitterly and sighed. We were afraid that Feng Ho would hold a grudge against us. Of course, we can't deny that we were selfish at that time. So people like you who can't even distinguish right from wrong are not worthy of sympathy. Madman snorted and turned to look at Fire Dance. Fire Dance was silent for a while and looked at Madman. I said that I respect my father's decision. Madman looked at Qin Feiyang and said, then call Hua Wenchang out. After all, this matter will be resolved sooner or later. Qin Feiyang nodded. With a thought, Hua Wenchang appeared in front of him. Hua Wenchang was also in seclusion in the Black Tortoise world. When he suddenly appeared outside, a trace of doubt instinctively crawled up his face. But when he saw Hua Dahong and the others, his brows immediately raised. Wenchang, we were wrong in the past. We apologize to you here. Please forgive us. We will kneel for you. The white-haired old man and the white-haired old woman hurriedly looked at Hua Wenchang. Then, with a plop, they really knelt in front of Hua Wenchang. Hua Wenchang didn't say anything. He glanced at the group of people and asked suspiciously, what's going on with them? This was done by this old man. It's also a test for them. Old Poison said. Test. Hua Wenchang was stunned. After thinking carefully, he more or less understood. At the same time, when the white-haired old woman and the others heard Old Poison's words, they couldn't help but be stunned. Could it be that Qin Feiyang and the others deliberately tortured them on the way? Your performance is not bad. Even in the face of a life-and-death crisis, you didn't retreat. Old Poison chuckled. The group smiled bitterly. Did they still have room to retreat now? In order to survive, no matter what danger they faced, they could only brace themselves. Suddenly, the white-haired old woman looked at Old Poison and said suspiciously, the person who went to seal the exit, was it you? Because at that time, Old Poison's back was facing them. When he left, he didn't show his face, so they only saw Old Poison's back. That's right. Old Poison nodded. Then it was you who saved us back then? The white-haired old woman said. If not. Chapter 3953. Thank you for saving our lives. The white-haired old woman bowed to the Old Poison again. You're still thanking me? Logically speaking, I've tortured you for so long. Shouldn't you blame me in your hearts? This surprised the Old Poison. How would I dare to blame you? We only have ourselves to blame. The white-haired old woman smiled bitterly. This old poison was Qin Feiyang's man. Moreover, back then in the hell, the old poison Li Zhongxing and Qiao Shui had fought with the Dragon King and the other two. Their strength was extremely terrifying. They even had their own sovereign divine weapon, let alone torturing them. Even if they killed them, they wouldn't have the guts to blame them. In short, they couldn't afford to offend them. At this point, given the current situation of the Feng people, if they didn't admit defeat, they would die. Wenchang, say something. The other old antiques finally recovered and looked at Huo Wenchang. Although they didn't say much, their eyes were full of pleading. Their only hope was Huo Wenchang. If even he wasn't willing to help, the Feng people would really be on the road to death. At the scene, there was dead silence. Huo Wenchang glanced at the group of people with a complicated expression. He hated these people. He was selfish and constantly made his daughter suffer grievances. But at the same time, family, friendship, kinship, he couldn't let it go. After all, he was born in the Feng people. He was also the patriarch of the Fire Phoenix clan. If he really didn't care and watched the Feng people fend for themselves, he couldn't bear it. Sigh. After a long time, Huo Wenchang sighed and turned to look at Qin Feiyang, saying apologetically, "Nephew, I'm really sorry. I've always caused you trouble." The meaning of these words was very obvious. He wanted Qin Feiyang to help find a place to settle down. The white-haired old woman and the others naturally understood. A trace of joy appeared on their faces as they looked at Qin Feiyang expectantly. "Uncle, you're being too polite." Qin Feiyang looked at Huo Wenchang and smiled faintly. After pondering for a while, he shook his head and said, "But it's not easy to find a safe place for the Feng people now." Ah. The group of old antiques immediately became nervous. "First, your phoenix nest has now become the home of the dragons. You also know the strength of Long Chun and his sister. I reckon that even I might not be a match for Long Chun, not to mention his father. I don't need to say more about Ice Dragon's strength. No one can afford to offend him. The land of Yin demons is the land of the blood demon race. I can't chase the blood demon race away for a Feng people. As for the Qilin clan, I believe that they don't want to have too much to do with the Feng people now. Other than that, there are 4 continents and the Heavenly Cloud Sea. Don't even think about the Heavenly Cloud Sea. I know my elder brother's personality too well. He would never allow you Feng people to enter the Heavenly Cloud Sea. As for the 4 continents, to be honest, I'm very worried about letting the Feng people enter the 4 continents." Qin Feiyang said. "Don't worry. We won't do anything rash. We just want to have a place to stay." The white-haired old woman hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "It's not that I don't believe you. You know better than I do what kind of people you phoenixes are. All of them have their eyes on the top of their heads. In their eyes, the human race is like an ant. Perhaps now you will be honest. But as time passes, I'm sure that you will slowly reveal your true nature." Qin Feiyang said, "We won't. I promise to restrain my clansmen. If in the future, there is really a clansman who dares to run to the human race to harm them, you don't need to do anything. I will kill him myself." The white-haired old woman vowed. It wasn't easy to find a way out for the Feng people. How could she miss it so easily? Fire Dance snorted coldly. "If such a thing really happens in the future, let alone me, even my father won't care about your life and death. Don't worry." "Definitely not." The white-haired old woman's attitude was firm. "I also promise, when we go back, we will set the clan rules. The Feng people will always be on good terms with the human race from now on." The white-haired old man also hurriedly promised. "Clan rules? This idea is good." Frenzy nodded. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment, and looked at the white-haired old woman and Frenzy. He nodded and said, "Okay, I'll see how you perform first. You can go to the eastern continent. I will send a message to Elder Hua, and ask him to bring you to the Kanglan Snow Mountain." "Kanglan Snow Mountain?" Frenzy was stunned and said suspiciously, "Isn't that the former territory of the Rogue Cultivator Alliance?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the white-haired old woman and Frenzy. He smiled faintly and said, Although the Kanglan Snow Mountain can't be compared to the former Phoenix Nest, it is enough for the Feng people to rest and recuperate. Thank you. Thank you very much. The Feng people will definitely remember your kindness forever. The two were extremely grateful. Hua Dahong and the others were also very happy. They finally had a place to stay. Qin Feiyang took out the divine sound transmission stone. Buzz. Soon. Elder Hua's shadow appeared. Elder Hua. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Elder Hua looked at Qin Feiyang and shook his head. Looking at the smile on your face, this old man knows that it's definitely not something good. Speak. Ah, Qin Feiyang laughed dryly. This old man knew him well. He asked, is the Kanglan Snow Mountain still empty? Kanglan Snow Mountain? Elder Hua was stunned and asked suspiciously, why are you suddenly asking about the Kanglan Snow Mountain? It's like this. Qin Feiyang told him about the Feng people's situation. What? You let the Feng people enter our eastern continent? Elder Hua immediately stood up, his face full of anger. Seeing this, the group of old antiques from the Feng people could not help but twitch their eyelids. If the Demon Palace did not agree, they would be in a desperate situation again. Don't be angry. Qin Feiyang hurriedly comforted him. How can this old man not be angry? It's not like you don't know the character of the Feng people. If we let them enter the eastern continent, won't our eastern continent be turned upside down by them? We'll talk about it later. It wasn't easy for us to drive the Rogue Cultivator Alliance away. I don't want another force stronger than the Rogue Cultivator Alliance to come and snatch resources and territory from our Demon Palace. Elder Hua snorted coldly. Don't worry. The Feng people will definitely not snatch resources from your Demon Palace. Hearing this, the white-haired old woman hurriedly walked to Qin Feiyang's side and looked at Elder Hua. You have nowhere to go now. Of course it's fine. But what about in the future? Elder Hua sneered. Definitely not in the future. I swear. The Feng people will live in seclusion in the Kanglan Snow Mountain from now on. We will not interfere with the affairs of the eastern continent. Elder Hua, as you said, the Feng people have nowhere to go. No matter what, I beg you to give us a way out. The white-haired old woman bowed and begged. Elder Hua frowned. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, you decide. If you really don't want to, I'll find another way. Brat, you're always causing trouble for me. Elder Hua glared at Qin Feiyang. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then he looked at the white-haired old woman and said, since Qin Feiyang is pleading for you, it's not impossible for you to enter the eastern continent. The white-haired old woman's face suddenly had a trace of joy. Don't be happy too early. I have a condition. Elder Hua said expressionlessly. Please say it. She would agree even if there were 100 conditions, let alone one. From now on, the Feng people must follow the lead of the Demon Hall in the eastern continent. In other words, you have to do whatever the Demon Hall asks you to do. Moreover, if the Demon Hall is in trouble, the Feng people must help immediately. You have to prioritize the interests of the Demon Hall. You have to protect the entire eastern continent together with the Demon Hall. As long as you agree, you can go to the Kanglan Snow Mountain now. Elder Hua said. The Demon Hall is the master of the eastern continent. It's not a problem for us to listen to you. But we have to do whatever you ask us to do? Isn't this a little? The white-haired old woman hesitated. Don't worry. The Demon Hall will not let you die. And we won't do anything overboard to you just because Qin Feiyang and the others are backing our Devil Palace. This old man simply wants to express his attitude, Elder Hua said. If that's the case, the white-haired old woman looked at the white-haired old man, Hua Dahong, and the others. All of them nodded helplessly. Did they have a choice now? All right. After getting everyone's agreement, the white-haired old woman looked at Elder Hua and nodded. I promise you that the Feng people will be the protectors of the Demon Hall in the future. Wrong. You don't have to protect the Demon Hall. You have to protect all the living beings in the eastern continent. Elder Hua shook his head. I understand. The white-haired old woman nodded. All right. After the Rogue Cultivator Alliance left, the Kanglan Snow Mountain has been empty. You can go there directly. Elder Hua said. Thank you. The white-haired old woman bowed. Elder Hu waved his hand and looked at Qin Feiyang. Kid, I allowed them to enter the Eastern continent because of you. You have to take responsibility. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. Elder Hu rolled his eyes at Qin Feiyang. Just as he was about to turn off the divine sound stone, he suddenly slapped his head and said, "There's something." Seeing Elder Hu hesitate, Qin Feiyang was speechless. If there's anything, just say it. Why are you being so polite with me? Elder Hu laughed and said, Indeed, there's no need to be polite with you. I just want to ask when you guys are free to come to the Demon Hall. Why? Madman was suspicious. It's because of the younger generation of the Demon Hall. I want you guys to take some time to come over and explain the mysteries of the ultimate meaning to them. It'll help them grow. Look, among the younger generation of the Sky Cloud realm, other than you guys, there's Long Chen siblings, Li Feng, Huo Wu, Yun Ziang, and the masked Shura. There aren't many that can be brought to the table. Elder Hu sighed. It's not that there aren't many, but there isn't even one. Madman bared his teeth. You're amazing. Elder Hu glared at him. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and nodded. That's a good thing. However, we don't have many ultimate meanings. Why not? You guys have a lot of face. You can ask the Feather Emperor, Shuezu, Longchen, and Longqin for help. As long as you can ask them, it'll be enough. Elder Hu laughed. Ask Longqin? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Chapter 3954. This is a good thing for the Sky Cloud realm. And at that time, I hope you can also go to the western, northern, and southern continents. If you don't have this ability, this old man will definitely not make this request. But now that you all have this ability, since you have the ability to help the Sky Cloud realm, then try your best to help. Elder Hu said. Okay, let's make the arrangements. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then I'll wait for your good news. Elder Hu chuckled and turned off the sound transmission godstone. Sure enough, the stronger you are, the greater the responsibility. Madman shook his head and sighed. Thinking back to how comfortable it was in the Sky Cloud realm, he didn't have to care about anything. But now, one moment he was doing something about the divine treasures, and the next moment he was teaching. If this continued, how could he have a peaceful life? Qin Feiyang also had a trace of helplessness on his face. He put away the sound transmission godstone and looked at the white-haired old woman and the others. You all also bring your clansmen and go to the Azure Wave Snow Mountain. Thank you. The white-haired old woman thanked him again. Hua Dahong looked at Huo Wu and her father with eyes full of guilt and asked, Wu or Wenchang, are you not going back with us? Huo Wu was silent. Huo Wenchang looked at Huo Wu and Hua Dahong and said, I will go with you to the Azure Wave Snow Mountain to take a look. As for whether I will stay there or not, I will think about it. Okay. Hua Dahong nodded and looked at the silent Huo Wu. He couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Let's go. Huo Wenchang opened a space-time teleportation divine artifact and took the lead to walk in. Hua Dahong and the others followed. Soon, only Qin Feiyang and the others were left. Madman looked at Huo Wu and asked, You really don't want to go and take a look? I don't want to face them for the time being. Let's talk about it later. Huo Wu shook her head. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Now let's discuss and see what ultimate profundities everyone has grasped. First, Huo Wu mastered the law of fire, the ultimate meaning of the law of cause and effect. Madman, the law of slaughter, law of thunder, law of destruction, and the ultimate meaning of spacetime law. Li Feng, law of slaughter, spacetime law masked Shura, the law of devouring Longchen, as far as he knew, was the law of spacetime. Longqin, the law of time, the law of death, the law of cause and effect. Qi Shaoyan, law of destruction. The Feather Emperor had the law of nothingness, the law of sword, and the law of death. The Blood Ancestor had the laws of slaughter, death, and time. The White-Eyed Wolf and Yun Ziang were still in closed-door cultivation, but they had not come out yet. After careful calculation, many of the laws are duplicated. If you don't want to go to Longqin, then you have to ask the Blood Ancestor and the Feather Emperor. Other than Longqin, only the White-Eyed Wolf and the Blood Ancestor have mastered the law of time. The White-Eyed Wolf definitely won't be able to help now. Qin Feiyang said. I'm definitely not going to Longqin. I can't be bothered to look at her face. Madman snorted. In that case, senior brother, I'll have to trouble you with this. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Me? Madman was stunned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. No. What about Li Feng? You can ask this kid to go. Madman frowned. Li Feng has mastered the law of slaughter and the law of time and space. You have both. Why would he go? Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. What about you? Madman asked. I have mastered the law of life and death, the law of cause and effect, and the law of light. Needless to say, some reclusive old antiques have mastered the law of light. Not to mention the law of life and death. Even I haven't fully comprehended it. As for the law of cause and effect, don't you have fire dance? Qin Feiyang chuckled. Me? Fire dance looked at Qin Feiyang in a daze. Thank you for your hard work. Besides, you're the princess of the Fire Phoenix clan. If you appear, everyone will definitely have a good impression of the Feng people in the future. This will help the Feng people develop in the Eastern continent in the future. Qin Feiyang laughed dryly. You've already thought of a reason for me? Fire Dance's mouth twitched. Madman's face also darkened. He said angrily, You're the one who promised Elder Fire, but now you're throwing your responsibilities to him. Is there anyone like you? Many of the laws we have mastered are duplicates. There's no need for us to go together. You guys just have to work hard. I'll even have the Master de Jura help you. He has mastered the law of devour. Later, you guys go find the Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor. You must ask them to come out. It won't take a few days anyway. After saying that, Qin Feiyang immediately led Li Feng and Old Poison into the Black Tortoise world, leaving Fire Dance and Madman outside in a daze. Black Tortoise World. Li Feng looked at Qin Feiyang and chuckled. Fortunately, you didn't arrange for me to go. This is a good thing. There's no need to reject it so much. Qin Feiyang chuckled. It's a good thing, but I'm not that good myself. Why would I go and teach others? Just thinking about it makes me feel awkward. Li Feng smiled embarrassedly. Be more confident. After all, you're someone who has mastered two ultimate profound meanings. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. He scanned the demon land and said loudly, Brother Azura, come here. Whoosh. Not long after, a black figure broke through the air. It was the masked Azura. Just like before, he was wearing a mask on his face. I say, what do you look like? Li Feng curiously looked at the masked Azura's face. Nonsense, of course I look like a human. The masked Azura helplessly glared at him. He then looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, What's the matter? Senior brother Madman and Fire Dance are waiting for you outside. They will tell you. Good luck. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a hint of craftiness as he sent the masked Azura out. I guess this guy is a little unhappy. Li Feng shook his head. Azure Wave Snow Mountain. Many years had passed, but this place was still a world of ice and snow. The snow was white, and the cold wind was bone-chilling. Buzz. Suddenly, space-time tunnels appeared. Countless people surged out. They were the clansmen of the Feng people. With such a big Feng people, there were naturally people who had comprehended the space-time laws. So cold, the people of the Fire Phoenix clan landed above the glacier. The first thing they felt was cold. Their bodies immediately released waves of Phoenix divine fire to dispel the cold air. Is it cold? However, the people of the Ice Phoenix clan felt very comfortable. As Ice Phoenixes, they liked this kind of world of ice and snow the most. Finally, a group of old antiques walked out and looked at the glacier. They couldn't help but smile. They had finally found a place to cultivate. Old ancestors, isn't this place a little small? It's not even 1/10 of our phoenix nest. Also, the illusion here is too bad. It doesn't matter to the Ice Phoenixes, but how can we Fire Phoenixes survive? Especially if we have to settle here for a long time? Some of the clansmen couldn't help but frown. Be content. This is the place. We risked our lives in exchange for this place. The old man said. To him, as long as there was a place to stay, he didn't ask for anything else. As for the environment, it could be changed. Just like the Rogue Cultivator Alliance, They set up a barrier around the Kanglan Snow Mountain to block the invasion of the wind and snow. Then they buried the spirit veins and crystal veins of the Feng people underground, and planted all kinds of medicinal herbs in the mountains. Soon it would become full of vitality. I think this place is not bad. It's remote and no one will disturb us. The Feng people can rest here peacefully. Everyone, let's move. The white-haired old woman smiled. The elders of the two clans immediately began to move. The elders of the three major clans were weaker than the reclusive old antiques. Of course, they would definitely be powerful in the 4 continents. Thousands of elders moved out and entered the center of the Kanglan Snow Mountain. Some took out the spirit veins and crystal veins, and some opened up caves. They were very busy. Wenchang, thank you. The group of old antiques looked at this scene, and were quite gratified. Then they looked at Huo Wenchang gratefully. No need. I'm a member of the Feng people. This is my duty. Huo Wenchang waved his hand. The group of people couldn't help but smile when they heard this. Wenchang, if you have the chance, persuade Wu Er. The Feng people can't do without her now. The white-haired old woman sighed. Although they had found a place to rest, if Fire Dance didn't return, the Feng people had almost no chance of rising again. They were even worse than the Demon Palace. At least the Demon Palace still had a sovereign divine weapon. Wu Er, Huo Wenchang lowered his head and didn't say anything. Wu Er's matter is not urgent. Besides, you're not Wu Er's character. Don't you understand? If the Feng people are really on the verge of death, she won't sit back and do nothing. As for whether she stays or goes, it's not very important, so let's respect her decision. The white-haired old man smiled. Hearing this, everyone couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. This was all self-inflicted. Hua Dahong rolled his eyes and looked at Huo Wenchang. He asked, I heard Qin Feiyang call you uncle just now. Yes. Huo Wenchang nodded. So you're very close now? Hua Dahong asked. What's wrong? Huo Wenchang was suspicious. He naturally had nothing to say to this father in the past. But now, there was already a gap in their hearts, and they weren't so close. This gap was difficult to eliminate in a short period of time. It would take time to slowly erase it. Since your relationship with Qin Feiyang is so good now, and Wu Er and the Golden-Winged Wolf King are also lovers, it can be said that you're even closer. Why don't you tell him when you want to give our Phoenix clan some miniature laws? Hua Dahong licked his face and smiled. Father. Huo Wenchang raised his eyebrows and said angrily, We've just found a place to settle down and you're already scheming. No. I'm doing this for the good of my people. How can you call it scheming? Besides, isn't there a saying that goes like this? Keep the goodies within the family. Instead of giving the law miniatures to others, why don't you give it to us? Hua Dahong said. The white-haired old woman and the others couldn't help but be tempted. An old antique said, There's also the time array. Even the Demon Palace has 5,000 years of time in a day. The Feng people can't not have it. Impossible. If you want to find Qin Feiyang, go find him yourself. I'm not that thick-skinned. With that, Huo Wenchang turned around and left. Where are you going? Hua Dahong hurriedly shouted. I'm annoyed. I'm going to relax. Huo Wenchang said without turning his head. This child. Hua Dahong looked at Huo Wenchang's back with dissatisfaction. The white-haired old woman looked at Hua Dahong and sighed. I say you're too hasty. Isn't this old man also thinking for the Feng people? Hua Dahong said angrily. I know. But Qin Feiyang and the others don't have a good impression of us at all. If you mention these things again, aren't you just asking for trouble? What if it causes their disgust? Actually, what we should do now is to quickly matchmake Wu Er and the Golden-Winged Wolf King. Only when the two of them get married will the Feng people and Qin Feiyang be a true family. At that time, we don't need to say anything. He will take the initiative to give us the law miniatures, let alone something as trivial as the time array. The white-haired old woman shook her head. That's right. Why didn't I think of this? Hua Dahong slapped his head and immediately pondered in his heart. Chapter 39:55. Half a month passed. A piece of news that shocked the eastern continent arrived. Madman, Fire Dance, and the masked Shura were going to teach the Tao in the demonic palace. Even the leaders of the human race, the Feather Emperor and the Blood Ancestor, would come personally. As soon as this news came out, the entire eastern continent immediately fell into an uproar, and it quickly spread to the western continent, the northern continent, the southern continent, and the various forbidden zones. For a time, Qin Feiyang kept receiving messages from various places. For example, the Alliance Master, He Zhongtian, and the Heavenly Palace Master. It meant that they couldn't just take care of the eastern continent, but also the western continent, the southern continent, and the northern continent. Regarding this, Qin Feiyang also patiently explained. After explaining in the eastern continent, he would immediately go to the other 3 continents. Only then did the Alliance Master and the others heave a sigh of relief. As for the 3 major races, they naturally wouldn't miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. On the day that Madman and the others taught the Tao in the demonic palace, the reclusive old antiques of the 3 major races came one after another. There were even people who were responsible for recording with the Divine Voice Stone. They recorded the entire process and naturally took it back to show it to the juniors of the clan. Until now, only then did everyone know that the Feng people had already moved into the Kanglan Snow Mountain. The Feng people must have obtained the permission of Qin Feiyang and the others to move into the Kanglan Snow Mountain. Thinking about it, it was really pitiful. They were originally the masters of a forbidden zone, but now they could only stay in a corner and had to listen to the demonic palace. It could be said that they had fallen from heaven to hell. But for the Feng people, it was indeed not easy to find a place to stay. The most important thing was, the Feng people moved into the Kanglan Snow Mountain, which meant that their relationship with Qin Feiyang and the others had begun to ease. Then everyone would naturally think that Qin Feiyang and the others were already the Feng people's backing. This way, no one would dare to look down on the Feng people. Even the dragons and Kirans wouldn't dare to do anything to the Feng people in the future. This was a very realistic thing. When you were down and out, everyone wanted to bully you. But once they found out that you had backing, their attitude would immediately change 180 degrees. On the same day, the sky above the demonic palace was simply a sea of people. It was densely packed. Although there were many people, it was very quiet. Only the voices of Madman and the others could be heard. It was only at this moment that everyone learned that there was another person called the Masked Azura. The Masked Azura was no stranger to the southern continent and the 3 great races. However, not many people in the eastern continent had heard of the Masked Azura. Regardless of whether it was Feng Zi's group of 3 or the Feather Emperor's group of 2, they were all doing their best to explain. Moreover, it wasn't just the ultimate profundity. The other laws and profundities were also explained without reservation. Those with good comprehension abilities would be able to gain something on the spot. For example, some young people, after listening, they entered a state of comprehension. There were even some who entered a state of sudden enlightenment, and soon comprehended the 5th profound or supreme profound. Anyway, this lecture had directly raised the overall strength of the eastern continent by a large margin. For the whole day, when it was over, everyone immediately went home to meditate in seclusion. Next, Madman and the others then headed to the western continent, southern continent, and northern continent. This kept them very busy. However, every time he saw everyone's expectant and respectful gazes, as well as some people directly entering a state of epiphany after listening to their explanations, he felt a great sense of accomplishment in his heart. The last stop was the heavenly cloud sea. This was arranged by Little Rabbit. Since you all ran to explain to the creatures of the 4 continents, you definitely wouldn't forget the sea beasts of the heavenly cloud sea. On the same day, Heavenly Cloud Island, the sea beasts of the various sea regions swarmed over. The Sea Lion Emperor and the other great beast emperors, as well as the great beasts of the land of buried gods, all gathered on Heavenly Cloud Island. Within a radius of hundreds of millions of miles, there were sea beasts everywhere. This scene was truly unprecedented. From start to finish, Madman and the others were busy for a month. A month passed. The land of buried gods was unexpectedly peaceful. No one from the Divine Kingdom came to the Heavenly Cloud Realm again. For the Heavenly Cloud Realm, this was of course a good thing. Who didn't want peaceful days? And now, everyone also cherished every day under peace. There was an old saying that said it well. You can only cherish it after you lose it. In the past, before the divine kingdom arrived, they could actually enjoy a peaceful life every day. But no one. There was constant internal strife and infighting. It could be said that there wasn't a day of peace. There was killing every moment. Now, when the divine kingdom arrived, everyone suddenly realized that a peaceful life was so precious. Black Tortoise Realm. Madman Fire Dance, Qin Feiyang, and Li Feng sat in the tea garden. I'm so busy. Madman drank wine in big mouthfuls and didn't forget to glare fiercely at Qin Feiyang. Isn't there a saying like this? The capable do more work. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Stop flattering me. Madman snorted coldly. Li Feng suspiciously asked, why didn't the Master de Jura come back? He stayed on Sea Lion Island with the people of the land of buried gods. Madman waved his hand. Speaking of which, how many people are there in the land of buried gods? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Not many. Apart from the 10 great beasts, there are only a dozen or so remaining subordinates of the human emperor. Madman shook his head and sighed. After recovering the memories of his previous life, whenever he recalled the battle back then, he couldn't help but feel sad. How strong are they? Qin Feiyang asked. They're all okay. Each of them has grasped an ultimate profound. Although it's only the ultimate profound of ordinary laws, I believe that after this lesson, their cultivation will definitely improve. Not only the land of buried gods, but also the other races. Madman smiled with relief. It seems that Elder Fire's suggestion is right. However, they also need time to grow. For now, we still need to stand in front and protect them. Qin Feiyang said. Has there been any movement from the Divine Kingdom in this month? Madman asked. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the scene of the core area appeared. He shook his head and said, during this period, they've been quite obedient. None of them came to cause trouble. Although we've had the upper hand in these few confrontations, we can't let our guard down. Because now they have basically figured out our strength. When the next time the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom descend, they will definitely be fully prepared. Fire Dance reminded. I think so too. Whether it's us or Long Chen's group, our strength has been exposed. They will definitely focus on us. However, when the next time comes, Qin Feiyang stopped here and turned to look at the ancient castle. He smiled and said, next time there will be a surprise for them. Yin Xiang? Madman asked. Yes. When Yun Xiang integrates 3 inheritances, he will have grasped the ultimate profound of the 4 strongest laws. His strength will be stronger than ours. There's also the white-eyed wolf. His battle soul has only revealed the ability to deprive one's cultivation. The people of the Divine Kingdom still don't know about the 2 abilities. When the time comes, he will naturally be able to catch them off guard. And now the white-eyed wolf is on Sky Cloud Island. Who knows what kind of fortune he has obtained? Maybe when he comes out, his strength will soar by a lot. Qin Feiyang laughed. Makes sense. Madman nodded and drank a mouthful of wine before asking. Then, how is your comprehension of the ultimate profound of the law of life and death? Sigh. Speaking of this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but sigh. No gains? Madman frowned. It's not that I didn't gain anything. However, I still can't figure out what the Divine King of Primal Chaos imparted to me. I can feel that this is a very crucial point. As long as I can figure it out, I should be able to comprehend the ultimate profound, Qin Feiyang said. Then tell us, what is the problem that has puzzled you? As the saying goes, 3 heads are better than Zhuge Liang. We will help you think about it. Fire Dance smiled faintly. Qin Feiyang was silent for a moment before looking at the 3 of them and said, in one sentence, put death on the ground and fight to live. Just this sentence has puzzled you for so long? Madman was stunned. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. These words were a bit of a blow. Fire Dance glanced at the madman and pondered. Although this sentence is easy to understand, it's nothing more than death before life. However, it's still the ultimate profundity of the law of life and death. We can't treat it with ordinary eyes. Hearing this, Qin Feiyang looked at Madman and said, see, this is the performance of wisdom. Madman's face was full of disdain. After thinking for a while, he laughed. How about this? I will kill you now and see what kind of reaction you will have after you die. Qin Feiyang's face suddenly turned black. Fire Dance and Li Feng were also speechless. Although it was put death on the ground and fight to live, it didn't mean that one would really die. Who could think of such a rotten idea? Moreover, who would have the courage to face death? Moreover, it was an uncertain factor. What are you afraid of? At most, you will reincarnate like me and be a hero in your next life. Madman bared his teeth. Get lost. Qin Feiyang stared at him speechlessly. The more you say, the more unreliable it is. Fire Dance shook her head and smiled bitterly. She looked at Qin Feiyang and said, I feel that the Divine King of Primal Chaos doesn't want you to really die. I think so too. Li Feng nodded in agreement. After pondering for a while, he said, if death can really comprehend the ultimate profound, then why didn't the Divine King of Primal Chaos die? What the Divine King of Primal Chaos wants to express should be something else. Madman glanced at Li Feng and Fire Dance and said, after talking for so long, it's the same as not saying anything. After drinking a mouthful of wine, Madman said, actually, I thought of a possibility. What? The three looked at him. Since it is a law, it must be related to the law. Is the Divine King of Primal Chaos trying to express that he wants to strip away all the laws you have now? Stripping away all the laws you have now. This is actually a way to put death on the ground and fight to live. Madman frowned. Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other. None of them had ever thought of this point. Madman chuckled and said, if you really want to do this, then remember to give me your law of cause and effect. Qin Feiyang looked at Madman in shock. He really wanted to slap him. After all this time, it turned out that he wanted to inherit his inheritance. What a bad idea. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.